All right, guys. Nice to see you all today. Going to call the meeting to order. Under 1A, any added items? Yes, Mayor Dahl.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. We have an added item, bylaw 2025-17. It's establishing a committee of the whole with regards to section 15, and it's with regards to FOIP references. For under business, I'd suggest item 4E.
See you, Madam Chair. Just point of order real quick. Just a note, bylaw 2025-17 is already on the agenda. It was sent to council this morning as it was excluded from the original package. So might be a confusion there.
Okay, so just for clarification, then it would be under 4C already, is that right?
Correct, yes.
Thank you very much, CEO Williams, and thank you, Mayor Dahl. We don't have an added item then, it's already included. Any other added items from council, administration? Seeing none, we'll move on to the adoption of the agenda. Do we have consensus for the agenda? Okay, seeing that, we have the adoption of the agenda by consensus. We'll move along to the adoption of the previous minutes. They are on page 2, Committee of the Whole minutes from July 7, 2025. Do we have consensus for the adoption of the minutes? Yep. All right, we will adopt the minutes through a consensus, and that's approved, and we'll move on to presentations. We are on page 6, 3A, Economic Development Strategy, and CEO Williams, would you like to present?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Today, myself and Sandra Blythe to my left will be presenting this report to council. So, as council was aware, for the last several years, we've been gathering data through various projects and partnerships to create what we present today as a framework and propose final engagement plan. So even though the strategy will not be presented to this council in this term as a final document for consideration, we thought it appropriate to introduce the progress to date and what we're considering the draft pillars of the plan for this council's consideration, given that it was certainly your the large bulk of the work and projects happened during your term. So today we just want to update you on that and get any feedback on the plan itself or our final engagement proposal as we lead into spring 2026 when we expect this to be formally considered by council. So as you're certainly not surprised, there has been many good ideas, needs, wants around economic development from across the community, the business sector, through our studies and through our surveys. And now with the strategy, actioning, and prioritizing these needs is key. So some of the examples we've heard to date, and certainly you've heard them in the last 4 years of your term, everything from Uptown Olds revitalization to seniors living and assisted living, event tourism, regional collaboration, Olds College, cooperation and strategic prioritization, Mountain View Power, industrial growth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we've all heard these, and these have all been the focus of this strategy and the work that's gone into it to date. So the purpose of the strategy is to focus and align the resources that we have to achieve or succeed towards the most probable economic outcomes. Not everything is as workable or as probable as all other priorities, but we believe a strategy will help us get there. Sets directions, expectations. This has never been achieved before, a Town of Olds economic development strategy. So certainly just having direction to administration, expectations set for councils and future councils, and for the community as well. And then we hope to introduce measurable outcomes into our economic development strategy and to our economic development function as well. Things like housing starts, assessment growth will be key KPIs moving forward. And obviously the end goal of any economic development strategy or department is to attract investment in order to grow our tax base. And growing our tax base is one of the fundamental pillars of long-term fiscal sustainability. So it's important to note again, though, that this is not the start of the strategy, that this has been ongoing since 2022. And to recap some of the efforts to date, up into current day with our Brood program, Sandra is going to take over from here and walk us through some of that.
Okay. Well, test. Can you hear me? There we go. All right. Thanks, Brent. Yeah. So since 2022, where we're at, starting with the Regional Business Support Network, as you know, last year in June, we were fortunate enough to get some grants from Prairies Economic Development Canada and support from Community Futures Central Alberta, which allowed us then to add a business development services arm to what we do in Invest Olds. So that's been a huge success. Since inception, there's been 29 jobs created, 326 businesses served locally and regionally. I won't get into the details of that, but it's been a huge success story, and even Prairies Economic Development Canada is profiling this as a case study in Western Canada's success. So next, investor and developer relations. That is an ongoing file. Right now, when we look at total investors worked with, I always put in the top 3 most active leads that I work on a regular basis with. The valuation of those leads is around $1.4 billion. Having a meeting at the end of this week, which could increase that to upwards of probably about 1.6. So we'll find out more on that. Commercial gap analysis, that was also completed this year, along with a housing needs assessment update. Rural renewal program we put on hold in February, but there's been 42 applied to the program. And then the Entrepreneur Stream program, that has been successful in getting 29 businesses approved. And then, of course, Mountain View Power, and then Central Alberta First Partnership. So that's a regional partnership with other municipalities, and I'll get into that actually next. So the Next Generation Economy Initiative is the broader regional initiative that Brood falls under. So when you look at that, those are the funding partners who helped get that project off the ground. So we raised about $150,000 from provincial and federal grants, and then along with our partners, on top of that, it was just over $200,000 in funding. So that in turn turned us into a regional partnership that we've called Central Alberta First. So just for a quick reminder, NGEI is the Regional Economic Strategy, 2 phases. Phase 1 was Brood, which we've now completed and we're in the implementation phase. And then phase 2 is all about supply chains. And that will focus on the agriculture industry and relevant suppliers within that. So that's to move this year. Overall, it's a 3-year cycle for the whole thing. So about 2027, end of 2027, beginning of 2028, we begin the process all over again. That is a system that ensures we constantly have relevant data and we are constantly addressing needs of business. So it's an implementation system, not just a report. All right, so phase 1 is all about the foundation. That's what we've assessed this year. Economic engines is phase 2. So it's looking at those big driving industries. So those that export out of here, they're bringing new money in, okay? Next, one more. Okay, so Brood is phase 1. Very simplistically, the whole purpose of Brood is to help us identify what in our environment, in our economy is not working and what do we have to fix. In turn, once we fix those things, it's a more competitive environment. Okay, so the Brood regional strategy, now done. We had over 700 businesses across the region participate in this, 125 in Olds specifically. The whole thing kicked off in January, where we all signed a project charter committing to business that whatever comes out of this report, we will be implementing and taking action on. So we all signed that. And since then, what happened was we had 41 in-person interviews with key employers to understand our workforce environment. 698 surveys were completed. That was a robust survey, 87 questions, but they did it for us, and now we must implement. 101 job seeker surveys, 77 volunteers supported us throughout that whole process. So it was a massive engagement process, and the next step will be quite similar. But anyway, so we now have a regional strategy that's completed. If you want to see it, you can find it at the centralalbertafirst.ca. Now, as well as that, we also pulled 7 local community data summary reports from the regional data. So all the businesses that took our survey, we did a small report. It's not a strategy, but what it is a comparative to our local business data to the regional business data to see how we compare. So I would encourage you to go to page 15 to 17 in that report to see the comparative. What we show you in there is where we are advantageous and maybe where we're less advantageous, and I'll jump into that later. Long story short, the regional strategy identified 27 projects that business has identified for us to move forward. We've flagged 8 projects for action. Okay, so the Olds Data Summary Report, that's essentially what we did, and that's available, same site, centralalbertafirst.ca. But the one thing that I want to draw your attention to here is the key finding. So as we did the comparative between all the 7 community reports and the regional report, what we found was there was an extremely high degree of data consistency. So what does that mean? It means as communities, we're not that different from one another. So no surprise to me. But what that does is it reinforces the value of why we should do regional economic planning together. It's far more cost effective. We had municipalities that put in $6,000 as opposed to the $100,000 it would have cost them to do a strategy on their own. So anyways, that's the one key thing that came out of it. So Central Alberta First funding contributions are moving forward to implement those 8 projects, okay? To date, we've raised $60,000. I expect to get us up to around 90, potentially 100,000 because the word is spreading fast. Other communities are contacting me wanting to be a part of this, okay? Yeah, so the first of 27 projects we've already implemented, and it's sold out. The AI conference. AI came through in the regional strategy by all sectors, that everybody wants to learn more about AI, and this is not a one and done. This is the first of a series of workshops that we're going to be doing, and it's sold out already 2 weeks before the conference. Okay.
Okay, so back to me. From regional to local, so just to remind Council that Budget 2024, Council agreed to partner with Community Future Central Alberta, which allowed us to get Michelle and Anne in this office through partnership with them. What's not included in this presentation is the Rural Business Support Network, RBSN, which is also a working partnership between Invest Olds and Community Futures. And that was really key in helping us get the data to use in our incoming Town of Olds ECDEV strategy. Even though it was a regional initiative, as Sandra alluded to, the project really benefited everyone, especially the Town of Olds, in acquiring the data we never had before. So what's on the cover page in your meeting package and what the draft ECDEV strategy for the town will highlight, it's based around the 7 economic pillars of the Brood strategy, which again is either available either investolds.ca or at centralalbertafirst.ca. And this is where we'll fit in what we believe are the solutions to the problem. So if we say human capital or financial capital, we see those as examples including the need for skilled tradespeople or the lack of accessing resources like CMHC grants or private sector financing, and what the town and Investolds and our partners can realistically do to help businesses solve that problem. On the infrastructure side, it'll get a bit more local. We know that our Southeast Industrial Park, for example, has some infrastructure challenges related to the connection of sanitary in that area. We know that serviced industrial land is fundamental to attracting large-scale industrial clients. So we'll discuss strategies around that of how we could meet that demand. Business climate, marketing, housing, again, things we're hearing from both the business community through the engagement done to date and what council has directed us to do, marketing being the most recent with the marketing plan approved in 2025 budget and with housing enabling and facilitating the town's housing strategy. So that is what the main part of the draft strategy will look at that the next council will consider. And next steps.
All right.
You.
Here we go. Yeah, so I guess going forward, the next steps are really focused on more engagement. It's going to be a ton more engagement as we go forward, reaching out to local businesses as well as regional businesses, having discussions with our key partners locally, the college, Uptown, the chamber, a host of others, industry associations, and those large export businesses. EDAC, of course, will see the first initial draft of the local strategy and help us kind of foster through that or facilitate through that. And yeah, final draft you'll see in the spring 2026.
With that, happy to take any feedback or comments, questions council may have, but hopefully it was a good enough introduction after 3 years of waiting.
Thank you very much, C.R. Williams and Ms. Blythe. Is there any questions from council with regards to the presentation? Mayor Dahl?
Yes, thank you for that presentation. It was very informative. Will you be able to explain a little bit more about what the Economic Development Advisory Committee will be doing in this regard in the future? Will they have the same format, or does it look like it's going to change?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, through the chair. Yes, so the EDAC committee will continue to be the leadership arm over, the whole process of the Next Generation Economy Initiative. And, as in the last year, serving in a leadership role to help ensure that they're providing support if and where needed. So yes, that role will continue.
Councillor Blatz, and then we'll go to Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and through you to Sandra Blythe, or to maybe CEO Williams. Maybe you could elaborate on who sits on that EDAC committee, just for the viewing public here, so they understand who is there and what they're what part of the community they belong to.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Blatz, through the chair. Yes, so the EDAC committee is comprised of 2 councillors, so Councillor Dan Daly and Councillor Harvey Walsh. As well, we have a representative from Mountain View County, which is Councillor Jennifer Lutz. And then we have representation from the business community, which is the chamber president, as well as Community Futures Central Alberta, as well as a local business person, which is Delina. She's a real estate agent. And then Uptown Olds is also represented on the committee as well.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to the Economic Development Officer. Just want to touch on one item that you raised and caught my attention. So if you could elaborate a little bit. You talked about 1.4 billion in leads with the potential to grow that. Can you just talk a little bit about how that all comes together? I'm hearing more and more from residents and recognize there's a lot of different spokes to economic development, whether that be housing, whether that be supporting our existing businesses, succession planning, and so on. But front and center for some people certainly is replacing Sundial and the $400,000 to $500,000 we lost in revenue. So can you talk a little bit about how this process is working now? Are we targeting specific industries, specific sectors, or do we just have the welcome mat open? We get these leads, and then, as I believe the CAO referenced both today and in the previous council meeting, we get bottlenecked because we don't have any investment-ready land, particularly in the southeast. So can you just talk to how that process is working now? Are we targeting certain industries, or come one, come all?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Wilson, through the chair. Yes, actually, housing, we are specifically targeting. We have been doing that for the last year and a half. So we get out monthly emails to builders, developers, real estate agents, and continuously promote the need for housing. So that is one industry we are specifically targeting. So how the process works for investment attraction is leads come to us through various ways. So a generated lead may be just a business that contacts us, okay, directly. Others may come through Invest Canada or Invest Alberta. And then there's those that we target. So that's the process. When I say an active lead, there is a difference between what's generated and what is active. So a generated lead typically are people that come in the door, they have an idea, or they so on and so forth, they have an investment opportunity. They become active when they fit a certain criteria. They can illustrate they have the capital that they say they need for the development of the opportunity. They have an identified project implementation timeline, and they also have critical documents as far as their ability to be able to provide AutoCAD drawings as an example. So they have a full understanding of exactly what they need to do and are ready to move. So they may have all those things, but sometimes investment and whatnot from other countries can hinder those types of things. So there's a number of variables that affect that process. But right now we have 3 very active leads that fit that qualification.
Williams?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to Councillor Wilson again, just to touch on the last part of your question there. So the Southeast Industrial Park, which is our only inventory of industrial land to any extent for servicing the foreseeable future, the challenges we're seeing when you compare that to the opportunities available, because everyone at the municipal level is kind of chasing the same 3 eggs. We hear the word data centers, we hear the word value-added agriculture, and then we hear the word Amazon. It seems, for lack of a better term, there's more to it than just Amazon. Cheap land is obviously number 1, service land, and power. Now, we have a trouble servicing land right now due to the sanitary connections or lack thereof in the southeast. The power is also a challenge for the new technologies and economies coming online. The only substation the town of Olds has is just to our west here, between us and the dog park. For us to take on any meaningful industrial capacity, such as a data center, a brand new substation would have to be built. And under our franchise agreement, we're responsible for providing the land to said substation. Something like FortisAlberta or TransAlta would build that. But largely, we're seeing our major opportunities coming in the value-added agriculture sector, and whatever sundial facility can be retrofitted to replace. And we've seen, as council has been made aware in closed session, various suitors at that facility, all of which have fallen through for various reasons. But as I discussed last time, cannabis facilities are very purpose-built facilities. They don't just convert into a new use quickly or overnight. So it is a challenge, but as Sandra alluded to, there is a lot of interest from the value-added ag sector. Our challenges there tend to be the price of water and the price of sanitary effluent, given that we are on a regional wastewater system, for example, whereas communities directly to our south or west do not face that same operating cost challenge. But if things we're able to navigate because of our competitive advantages here, I believe, Olds College being the most significant, but also producers in the immediate area that have things like the feedstock required for whether it be biofuels or the research and development that goes into these emerging technologies. So hopefully that helps answer the question. But long story short, nothing's guaranteed. We're just trying our best to align solutions to the problems that we know we have, and nothing happens overnight, of course.
Go ahead, Council Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And this truly is a supplemental. I know it'll surprise people, but truly a supplemental. And thanks to both of you for that answer. So just looking ahead, so a strategy is going to come forward in 2026, spring of 2026. We've referenced the Southeast lands a couple times today and previously. Investments needed there. Those options for investment are either going to be through the investor, the developer, the business themselves, I assume, and or offsite levies, or the future council is going to have to make some very tough decisions around funding and financing those enhancements, infrastructure build, which I assume could be couple million dollars, which would mean, in all likelihood, and I realize you're right, nothing happens overnight. It's about relationship building and sowing seeds. But realistically, we're probably not talking until 2027 for council to be presented, or 2026 for council to be presented a budget that would enable them to perhaps start spending to invest in those industrial lands, correct?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. That's a fair assumption, yeah. So Southeast Industrial, in particular, 68th Street and the sanitary connections were probably $1.5 to $2 million at least there. Now, how do we pay for that? Well, it's two options, I guess, if I had to make two. Either it's developer pay, if you attract a large enough developer, or $1.5 million is but a rounding error. They're few and far between. Or we have offsite levies, only in that area, through smaller businesses coming online. We'll never get to $1.5 million, for example. So this will be a major part of the ECDEF strategy too, is how do we prepare our industrial lands for investment and prepare ourselves for industrial investments. And if the future council doesn't think it's worth the investment, that is also an option as well, that if it's just not worth that price tag for, because nothing will be guaranteed if you invest that money, for example. So it is a bit of math, but a bit of risk and luck required. But 2027 is the hopeful time when council will consider an improvement for that area.
Thank you, Councillor Batts.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and through you to CO Williams. But, excuse me, we do know, though, that to attract industrial or commercial business really balances out our tax levies as far as if we're 70-30 split, 70% residential and 30% industrial or commercial, it takes a lot of the burden off the residential taxpayers. So we really do want to do everything that we can, potentially, within reason, to promote industrial and commercial growth. And that would also include, and I believe we've touched on this several times, as far as a new substation, although we would have to provide the land per se, but we have been investigating those avenues too as well, just to ensure that we can grow in the future.
Thank you, and through you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, part of the strategy too, but the work to date that Sandra has been doing, a large part of her time is spent on discussing with ACO Gas, with local natural gas producers in the area as well, to understand agreements and supply abilities for electricity, for natural gas, and then with the water commissions as well, which some of you have been part of those conversations also, to make sure we have the understanding of what's required should investment come forward. Regarding your first comment with the what we call the split, residential, non-residential, absolutely. The healthiest municipalities are the ones that have a higher non-residential tax assessment, as the residential assessment is requires a lot more services that cost money. Places, whether it be commercial or industrial, they tend not to want parks or swimming pools or hockey rinks. Those things cost a lot of money. Businesses come here and generally build their own infrastructure, plow their own roads, pay their higher tax bill and move on. But it's we still do pretty well. We're about 76% to 24% residential and non-residential, and we hope to see that getting closer to 70-30 by the 5-year window of this proposed ECDEV strategy.
Thank you. Is there any other questions or comments from maybe the two council members on the EDAC committee? Would you like to comment?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So yeah, I sit on the Economic Development Advisory Committee, and I just wanted to emphasize that something that Sandra has said was that this is something that's going to get reviewed every 3 years. So it's a living document, it's a living strategy that is going to move and shake and form to what the new environmental environment is out there. And it's very exciting to see the regional approach that's taking place here as well, which is also going to be on a 3-year review cycle. So seeing lots of good things come out of this. We see a lot of people that are being benefiting from this work that Sandra's department's doing. She's modest in that she never mentioned all the work that they're doing with the business attraction and retention as well, both locally and regional. So I'm very excited to see where this continues to grow and the people that it helps. So thanks.
Thank you for your comment. And Councillor Walsh.
Yeah, I just want to add some more to that. This process that's been in the process for 3 years is a very, I'm going to say, excellent foundation for economic development. And Sandra and her crew have done an excellent job. I've been involved with CAPE and its development over time, Olds Institute and its development over time. And I see this as years ahead of what was ever produced in the past for us, especially for Central Alberta First. So yeah, kudos to Sandra and her crew, because I think they've developed something that's going to be having a very long-lasting impact on our community.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Question from Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment real quick here. So I fully support the ECDEV movement. It's something that I've been championing since I got on council. Having a good, solid strategy supported by facts and figures that we've collected through the community is super important. Councillor Blatz talked about the 70-30 ideal split of revenue. Later on in the package, we'll see today that it's 78-22, which is our current, and that's significant because of the loss of the two large industrial players in our Southeast Industrial Park recently. Getting back to that 70-30 is super important. I think everybody agrees on that. Further, also in our agenda package is that survey results from our budget survey, which is our community telling us they agree with this as well, because you'll see in that survey results as we go through it later on today that both economic development is recognized by the respondents to our survey as being critical to the development of the community, but so too is that 70-30 split talked about in that survey. Is that something we need to get back to? Not specifically 70-30, but the idea of commercial revenue source and changes of the way we get revenue into the town. So it's interesting that all three of these proposals are coming at the same time, but it's interesting how they're all linked so tightly together. Both our community members telling us what they want done in our community, how the ECDEV program is supporting pretty much everything that's in that survey and directing into that same thing, the housing strategy. Our businesses are telling us they need places for their workers to live and affordable places of the right nature. And our economic development program is responding to that. And the survey is also saying that. So I kudos to all of the projects that ECDEV is working on and the town identifying those as separate projects that are being looked at from other parts of the town's administration as well. So just big kudos to the entire team. Thanks.
Hey, Councillor Cummings, and I just have one comment I wanted to make, and that was, I too was going to allude to the budget survey later on that's coming up on our agenda, and the fact that our residents are seeing more value in economic development. Certainly it had been in the past a lower number. Certainly we had a very small percentage, And now we're seeing that growth, and I think a lot of it has to do with the things that they're already seeing in town, the positive growth, the housing in particular, which we have 2 apartment buildings under construction that we haven't seen for quite some time, and I think a lot of that has to do with the council supporting our administration to go and do housing needs assessment, both the housing needs assessment and the retail gap analysis, which helped identify needs for housing and for other businesses to come into town, and the support of the local businesses. I don't think you would have gotten 125 people, local businesses, providing information on that survey if it wasn't for fostering a good attitude within the community. So kudos to the department, and look forward to seeing what you're doing in the future. Of course, I won't be on council, but I certainly hope that I'll be reading about it. Thank you. Could I get a motion from the floor here? Councilor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I move to accept the Economic Development Strategy Report as presented.
Thank you. All in favor? And that motion is carried. We'll move on now to item 3B, which is the Infrastructure Services Quarterly Report. And CO Williams, I would imagine you wouldn't mind introducing.
Ooh, yes, indeed. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Dr. Pedro, to my right, is going to walk us through his quarterly report here. Adrian, go ahead.
Perfect. All right. Good afternoon, Council. I'm happy to guide you through our Q3 report. We've been quite productive, and I'll do my best to guide us through. All right, moving on to utilities key performance indicators. So as you can see in Q3, we did the bulk of our work in pressure testing, sewer main inspections and manhole inspections, and utility dig repairs. Not to mention the 6 water service repairs that we've performed. So we are continuing progress on the utility side, and we are hitting quite a few of our targets. All of these targets are based off of our business plan. So they are a bit of a moving target, but they're lines that we feel that we could meet for the most part. This is not quite the updated one. Okay. So did want to provide all good. We have an updated PowerPoint with a slightly different slide, but wanted to give council an update on the work order breakdown for the utilities department. And that's not quite it. Sorry about that. No, it's just this one. No worries. So just wanted to give council a breakdown on where we're spending our time. As you can see, unsurprisingly, most of our work orders are related to sanitary and water issues. Many of these would be attributed to any sort of repairs or investigation work done by the team. So the large majority in Q3 are for those 2 categories. So lots of progress there. And continuing on to our water loss and I&I, just a quick update in Q3. We have we've repaired 6 service leaks. One thing to note is that the camp strip meters, as were installed in phase 1 and as part of the pilot program, have identified 6 leaks within homes, 3 being within the homes themselves and 3 being on the service line outside the home. We do have a number of outstanding leaks that we are looking for. Some are more elusive than others, but we are making progress on all of them. On the wastewater side, did want to highlight what council's investment into CCTV inspections has done for the town. So we finally received all of the footage. We've reviewed all of it at this point, and we found 79 points of infiltration along the entire system. It's quite a high number, but it does give us that information, and we're able to now determine what that repair and maintenance plan looks like.
Sorry, Mayor Dahl.
Thank
I
you
was-
very much.
I was waiting for him to finish his report before I asked for questions.
The
Go ahead.
entire, oh, uh, may I ask a question?
Yep, sure, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for those key points you were just sharing with the water loss and I&I. Is it appropriate for me to ask you the question of how much money we saved or what a dollar value was that came out of that by finding that water loss?
Ooh, I don't think I could say per leak. I think on the next few slides, we do show our water loss and wastewater loss numbers, so it would be reflected in those. Very good. And again, on the wastewater side, we have seen quite a high volume of precipitation this year, so 315 millimeters over the summer months. This is substantially more than 2024, where I believe, if I recall from memory, we were at 264 millimeters. But the interesting thing which we're seeing, and this is demonstrated in a couple slides, is that the effect of that precipitation is becoming less and less. So although we know we have inflow and infiltration issues, it's good to see that effect is starting to be minimized. All right, moving on to, I apologize, that is very hard to see. As council requested on the Q2 report, we did try to provide a reference to 2024's numbers, both cubic meters and percentages and dollar values. We will improve this for the next quarter, but that being said, we are seeing substantial progress in both the water loss and wastewater loss numbers. Just as a summary, in 2024, our average water loss was 28.12%. 2024, thus far, it's 22.57%. So we're seeing obviously a drop there. On the wastewater side, in 2024, it was 39.63%, the yearly average. And so far in 2025, we're down to 36.78%. And you can see the respective savings in both those areas thus far. And because I like pretty graphs, we are just showing a comparison of what the last 4 years looks like for the wastewater distribution volumes. In the dark green, you can see that those volumes are the lowest for all the years. That's a good indication that we're sending out less water into the distribution system year over year, which is always a good sign that we are repairing those leaks, so it's bringing those distribution volumes down. Now, distribution volumes could be affected by other things as well, but generally you do want to see that trend going downward. And this one is a little messy. This is the same type of analysis, but with the precipitation volumes incorporated. And you can see sort of in the middle of the graph or the chart there that the light green is the wastewater volumes for 2022. They are incredibly high. And along with that, you do see that blue line that represents the rainfall there. So you can see an immediate correlation between the two. When we look at the dark green, which is the 2025 bar there, we do see that there is a reduction in wastewater volumes year over year as well. They are relatively close in August and September as the 2024 numbers. However, to note in these 2 months for this year, we do have multiple mobile home parks that are experiencing large leaks that is getting into the wastewater system. So it is pushing that number a bit higher. Now that being said, they are paying for that water, so we shouldn't see that financial loss reflected. And moving on to water meters. Just a quick little update on phase 1. That phase is largely rolled out, as council is aware. We are seeing an increase in the average billing accuracy of about 13.67%. And that's attributable to, just as we alluded to prior to the program, older meters, they degrade over time, they read less accurately, and so the new meters are showing the results of that. The phase 2 locations we did show in this little map here. All 822 locations are identified. One thing to note for phase 2 is that we are introducing replacements on industrial and commercial businesses. So we are expanding those to the larger meter sizes, which is good to see. On the public works side, Q3 was quite busy for us. So council will notice that most of our line painting and in-house and contracted maintenance and repair programs were underway in Q3. We did see quite a few in-house repairs on the asphalt side, so our team was doing quite well with our new program and new equipment there. And moving on, same type of information as we presented in utilities. We can see that the bulk of our time on the work order side is spent on roads and what we call fleet costing. Fleet costing would be related to the work that the mechanic is doing, so all the repair and maintenance work there, which we'll get to in the next slide. Perfect. So I wanted to separate out the mechanic function in this report. As council is aware, that mechanic function started in June, and so I wanted to represent what efficiencies that has presented to the town so far. And in Q3, the mechanic completed 147 work orders. We're seeing that the average hour to complete each repair is about 2.47 hours. A little far on the presentation, but no worries. The turnaround time for each repair is about just under 7 days, which is quite quick compared to what we've seen in outsourcing repairs. The slide that's on the screen right now is just a representation of the labor cost savings. So internally, the bar in green, that is our internal labor cost for those 147 work orders. If we were to outsource the work that the mechanic function has completed, it would be almost $45,000 worth of cost. So we're immediately seeing cost savings there. And I quite accurately see this in our spending in our repairs and maintenance. And moving on to planning and infrastructure, quite a few areas where we're making some progress. So asset management, that's the big one we've discussed at various council meetings. We are at the point now where asset reconciliation is ongoing. All of the critical assets are nearly complete. We are developing preliminary repair and maintenance plans for the roads, water, sewer, hydrants, etc. And so that all is underway. E-permitting is also underway. We do plan on releasing that later this year. We are using it internally as we speak, just to sort out all the kinks before we issue that to the public. And on the engineering side, we do have a few DAs in progress, Vistas 5A and the newly signed Larchwoods development. And we are reviewing our engineering standards, which we hope to have complete by the end of the year as well. Approval timelines and values. So I apologize again, this is difficult to see. So what we're seeing on the planning and development side is that, again, 2025 is turning into a bit of a record year for the town. So we're seeing that both on the development permit value and building permit value side. And in terms, in terms of the timelines of the 68 permits that were issued in Q3, they are still within the reasonable range for timelines. There was a slight delay given the office move, so that delayed numbers a little bit, but still well within the reasonable range. Moving on to building permit statistics. So this is just a representation of all of the building permits issued throughout the year. We are seeing that 2025 again is just continuing its blistering pace, so it is much higher value than 2024. So it's great to see all the development that is happening in town. And a similar trend is the development permit statistics. So again, highest development permit year that we've ever had, and the permit valuations also much higher than 2024. And then Voyant Alert. So we wanted to bring attention to this latest software that the town is using. It's fairly convenient. We can issue notices to any sort of user that signs up, and they are going to be informed of any sort of water restrictions, service repairs, any informational items that the town is putting out. In the infrastructure services group, we have started using this over the last month, and it's a fairly efficient system. So just wanted to give council representation of what we're doing and what that looks like so far. And then moving on to health and safety, I just wanted to highlight our Q3 stats. So we've had a total of 3 incidents in Q3. It's fairly low considering that's 3 months and over the summer with quite a bit of work. So I think our health and safety program is doing quite well. And looking ahead, we've got a lot, or maintaining our existing programs. On the utility side, there's pump house meter upgrades that are still ongoing, and water and sanitary sewer repairs, of course. Public works side, we are still doing line painting, so we're nearing the end of season, so we're trying to wrap that up. We have started our fall sweeping program, particularly in Uptown and the Red Roots. And then we are completing our internal hot mix asphalt repairs, of course, and then planning and infrastructure are the engineering standards update. And then we will be reviewing the shallow utility permit process as well to streamline that program. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
That covers a lot of information. Thank you. Are there any questions from council? Councilor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and through you to Director Pedro. This is nothing that you covered in here, but one question that was posed to me is our leaf and branch dump, and refresh my memory for the viewing public when it's going to be open and closing for this season, because some people are requesting, and maybe it's a little longer, and reading through all of the number of different comments made in the budget survey, maybe that is something that we need to be a little more cognizant of, and then maybe we can get that information out as well. Again, I'm sure it's probably coming, and I may be a little bit premature on asking the question, but if we could maybe get some information out, that would be great.
For sure, that's a great question, and I think that's a good avenue that we can put out a Voyant Alert so people know. It's a bit of a moving target. It's really weather dependent. End of October-ish is kind of that timeline, but we can certainly put out some communication on that.
Any other questions? Councilor Cummings, then Councilor Wilson. Go ahead.
I actually didn't have a question. I was just pointing at Councillor Wilson.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to the director, I do have a couple of questions, but we'll do it one at a time. So I believe our capital budget for 2025 included purchase of a couple pieces of equipment, mold compressor and packer and a drum roller to aid in our street repair. I'm just wondering, have we purchased those pieces of equipment, and what kind of benefit, if we have, what kind of benefit are we seeing in terms of reduced reliance on third-party contractors to aid in our repair of line digs and street repair? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. So we have purchased all those units. We purchased those in January, I believe, for all of them. The good news is that all of them are in use almost on a daily basis at this point. Those pieces of equipment have facilitated is literally not using external contractors for any of the utility dig repairs and any other what we'll call small asphalt repairs. So our team has been busy all year chasing the utility digs and performing repairs on those locations, and all of that work has been done in-house. Now, normally what we would have seen if that work was contracted is that, say, a dig was completed in the spring or sometime in the summer, you'd have to wait for the contractor to come, generally in late fall or towards the end of the season, and they'd have to patch those locations. That lag in repair timing is no longer there. We can typically do that repair in-house within about a week or two at the most. The more important side of having that internal function is that we don't incur those costs for third-party asphalt placement. That's a big part of the asphalt repairs themselves. So if we're doing a utility dig, more than likely it's contracted out. So we do have that cost to deal with. And last year, a big chunk of those repair costs was the asphalt placement. We've eliminated that cost using this program. So all we have is just the equipment and labor cost there, which is much lower than actually hiring out a company to do an asphalt patch.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Chair. One quick question for Director Pedro. So if we look at page 10, which I think is actually on the screen right now, maybe one page down. Thanks. We see here at the bottom of the table the 24 utility dig repairs. And then if we go down to page 17, we'll see kind of near the bottom there in the light, in-house asphalt repairs by the meter squared 732. Is that the same? Obviously, that's our crews going out and repairing the asphalts as you just described to Councillor Wilson. Are those the same digs accounted for through utilities digs and through Public Works? I'm assuming Public Works is the one doing the road repair for the utility digs at the end of the day. So that 732 is the 24 digs that we're talking about, or very close to that?
And that's correct.
For the clarification.
Thank you. We're going to Councillor Daly and then to Councillor Wilson again.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Through you to Director Pedro. And I noticed on one of your charts, the infrared machine doesn't seem to be doing much work these days. I'm just wondering, have we retired that machine into the fence line, so to speak, or are we planning on still utilizing that machine going forward?
Fair question. So we've been focused on completing the internal repairs for utility digs and some other small asphalt repairs. Generally, with the new equipment, that process is much faster. Not to say we won't use the IR paver, it just has more specific areas where it could be used. So we always gauge what's going to be a more efficient repair, whether it's the remove and replace like we're doing, or using the IR. So could definitely be used in the future.
Supplemental, go ahead.
So as a supplemental to that, so then we hear a lot about the state of which our streets are in as far as potholes and so forth. So are we still concentrating on them, or are we concentrating more on the big utility digs right now and then maybe transitioning into the smaller repairs?
For sure. So this year we got caught a little bit on the utility digs. So there was a few carryovers from last year. And then of course the very many utility digs we've done so far. So we've had to try and catch up and keep up to date on those. So that's primarily been what our Public Works has been doing in terms of asphalt repairs. Repairs that haven't needed hot mix, we've been just placing cold mix as we usually would in whatever pothole area. That being said, the intent is to expand the hot mix repairs to do other areas besides utility digs, of course.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to the Director. Just a quick question going back to the mechanic on site. And I'm just wondering, you flag the repairs and the maintenance that are happening. Are we more in a reactive state with those repairs, or through the work order system and whatever other internal system we have? I don't know if it would be citywide or something. Are we able to do some preventative maintenance to improve the availability, to minimize the downtime and avoid urgent, emergent repair type work to our equipment? Or are we more leaning still towards being reactive? Somebody brings in a trimmer or a lawnmower and says it's broken, fix it, I need it now. Thank you.
Good question. We're not going to get away from the reactive repairs, unfortunately. But no, the intent is using citywide to build out those preventative maintenance programs. Braden, since he's been here, has been sort of inundated with the reactive repairs or repairs that haven't been completed, even though they should be preventative maintenance programs. And so we're starting to see a few months into that function, we're moving in that direction where some of those plans are being developed. So certainly not there yet. It's going to take time, but that is the intent.
Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple questions about page 13 of our package there with the very small type data there. The first question, I kind of need two questions because one kind of alludes to the other one, but we'll see. So if we look at the 2024 total numbers and the 2025 numbers, are these the year-to-date totals or the total year numbers for both 2024 and 2025? So like if I look at the 2024 number for water loss at 621,000, I look at the number presented under 2023, 330. Is that to date 2025 or expected to be the total for 2025? Because that's a half the number. I'm just curious where that's lines are heading.
For sure, good question. So the 2024 would be the entire year, last year. And then 2025 would be year to date, so January to August.
And a truly supplemental question. So first, I'm going to applaud the effort and the work being done by your department to get these numbers under control over the last couple of years. Obviously, we're not going to expect a 50% increase or decrease in loss on water loss. Do you have an idea of what we could be seeing trending, given that September, October, November, December, we're not going to see as much rainfall as we saw in the big period, so I'm not going to see that reach up to the 600,000, I hope. But do we have a guesstimate here as to where we're looking at for total water loss in the year, and same with the wastewater loss?
Oh, that's a tough question. No, we do those estimates all the time. So for water loss, I would expect similar or better numbers than 2024, if that helps, just based on the trends that we're seeing. On the wastewater side, I would expect to see probably improved numbers than 2024, just given some of the data that we're seeing so far in September. September wasn't reported on this given the time frame for submission, but I would expect better, in all honesty. Not to put too much pressure on my team, but.
Thank you. CEO Williams.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And through you, just to supplement Director Pedro's comments, when we were looking at this before, I'm more risk tolerant to giving numbers to council, I guess, than Adrian, giving his engineering background and my total lack thereof. We're expecting, in 2022, for example, through water loss and I&I, the unbilled loss that we were seeing was about $2.4 million. When you add these numbers together, for 2025 actuals, we're more on pace for a $1.5 to $1.4 million loss in both of those categories. So even though it's still a lot of money to be losing, no question, substantial progress has been made, and you can see just in the percentages, especially on wastewater, which is coming down more slowly. They're doing exceptional work. And also just to remind council, from 2022 and 2023, this isn't just about the numbers as well. We, on 5 different occasions, had to phone Alberta Environment to emergency divert our lift station into this poor farmer's field 5 times. So it is really about the environmental impact that our system has had, and also on the integrity of the system, that we've also had some private sanitary backups because of the infiltration and inflow during rain events in your terms. So the dollar amount given here is just, it's easier to explain that to council and to people, but the risks we were seeing 3 years ago of not doing something were much more than just the $2.4 million.
Thank you, CEO. And I'll just add on to that a little bit as a member of the SRD, which is the Wastewater Commission. Certainly we had a rain event this year that was pretty high, and we did not have that spillover. So, and that was the first time in a couple of years that we didn't. So it obviously shows to me that what we're doing is the right way. It's working, and obviously the dollar figures will result in that as well. I also wanted to say too that we've had the largest drop in wastewater usage of any of the members of the commission simply because of the work we've done on our INI. So that's another thing that I wanted to mention. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, well, we'll go to Councilor Blatz and then Councilor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and through you to Mr. Castillo Williams. So going forward, then, it's very important that this be a priority for, I mean, this council made it a priority, but going forward, it should be considered a top priority to continue to see a downward trend, because if I understand correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that when we have 100% cost recovery on our utility bills, these costs are built into how we are determining what we're charging to a degree, are they not? So if we continue with a downward trend, we should slowly, perhaps slightly, see a decrease in our utility bills.
Thank you for the question, through you, Madam Chair. The short answer is yes. I'm not sure if I would say the word decrease or a certainly downward pressure on increases. Director Lindeman can get more specific than I can, but I believe when we do our annual utility bill presentation to council, roughly 20% of what residents see on their monthly utility bill is built in because of water loss and I&I. It got so bad in previous years that we were still losing money on top, like significant dollars on top of that 20% after we deducted that 20% revenue. So obviously the more efforts and success we have in reducing water loss and I&I, the more that money can actually cover all of our losses, plus then ideally go into either immediate capital upgrades or into reserves for future capital upgrades, and certainly have less pressure on the costs residents see in their monthly utility bills.
You have a supplemental? Supplemental.
Just a final comment. Thank you for that clarity on that, because I think that's important. Even if we don't see maybe a decrease, but even not huge increases coming forward, then that's a win for us in many, many ways. And then we're not utilizing any of our utility reserves either to supplement our bills as we have in the past.
Thank you, and move on to Councilor Wilson.
Yeah, no, thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I'll begin to be very brief because my point was going to be similar to Councilor Blatz's. I just, again, these are not theoretical saving dollars, one way or the other. It'll either be money in the pocket in the jeans of our residents or money in the town's pocket, as you said, to be utilized to return to reserve. But these aren't pink, hypothetical, theoretical saving dollars that we're talking about, correct?
Thank you, and through you, no, correct. These are dollars that we've had to take out of our cash flow to pay the commissions because we're losing them and not collecting that from residents. So every percentage or dollar we save here gets returned in one way or the other.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? I think we've exhausted this one. Can I motion? Councilor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I make the motion that council accepts the information or infrastructure services quarterly report as presented for information.
You all in favor? And that motion is carried. We'll move on now to item 3C, which is the corporate services quarterly report. CO Williams.
Thank you again, Deputy Mayor, and Director Lindeman's going to lead us through this one. Do you want me to drive?
Thank you. I'm just going to skip over the overview. We all know corporate services is made up of finance and people and human services. Just going to go over a few projects we've been working on. So the third quarter of 2025 was a particularly busy period for our IT department. In addition to supporting our office relocation, which involved dismantling and reassembling over 60 workstations and setting up all the audio-visual systems in all of our meeting rooms in this new municipal center. They were also implementing this year's capital projects, which included the replacement of our servers and network switches. So thank you to the great work and coordination from our IT coordinator, Carolyn Rutley. Everything did come together very smoothly and was very little disruption that we met through our office relocation. On the other side of people and information services, our human resources department has been busy reviewing, amending, and creating a few key administrative policies. Those are our personnel handbook, respectful workplace, drugs and alcohol, and a bring your own device policy. And then finally, we've been working on our 2026 budget engagement. There is a short summary that was included in this agenda package here and on the slide, but I won't get into it now as it is coming up next in the agenda. We won't want to go over that twice. This slide here is just updated once a year. I did go over this in my Q2 report. It's just our annual statistics, so nothing new has been updated on here. Moving to property taxes and utilities, there have been no changes to our pre-authorized or e-billing enrollments in Q3, but as you can see, both have increased over 2024. Taxes receivable is still trending slightly higher in 2025, meaning there is approximately 100,000 more outstanding in property taxes than there was at this time last year. Moving down to our meter metrics, both the no reads and the zero reads have decreased in comparison to 2024. Grants, this is hard moving two screens. Moving on to grants, we submitted 3 in Q3 of 2025. That is the New Horizons for seniors, so that's a $25,000 grant for a new roof at the Evergreen Center. The CFEP Small Stream, which is the Community Facilities Enhancement Program. This is for renovations at our old fire hall, which includes a boiler replacement, and our fire services training grant for training in 2026. We are still waiting on 4 grants being awarded, and we were successful in one grant, which was the TC Energy grant, which was $20,000 for a drone at our fire department. In procurement, we did not release any new RFPs in the Q3, but we did award 2, which was the CCTV at Olds College and a snow clearing contract at our fire department in our CMP building. In people and information services, we had 4 recruitments, 11 employees onboarded, 1 internal transfer, and then within IT, there were 265 tickets within the Q3 of 2025. Again, we don't have any data from 2024 for this department. Moving on now to our Q3 financial reporting. At 75% of the way through the year, we've recognized $28.9 million in revenue, or 79% of the budget. At this time, revenue is projecting to be under budget by approximately $27,000. Some of the main items affecting our revenues at this point are a few of the good items are building permits, as Director Pedro was talking about, having a record year in our building permits revenue. ATCO franchise fee is tracking a bit over budget, and some slight increases in fire, cemetery, and our user fees at the Aquatic Center and Sportsplex. The not so good in our revenue area is our Fortis franchise fee continues to track approximately $237,000 under budget, and our property tax revenue is under budget at $55,000. On the expense side, we have spent $26.4 million to date, or 73% of the budget. At this time, expenses are projecting to also be under budget, approximately $358,000. Contributing to that is our contracted services are tracking under at about $117,000, and our RCMP contract is under at just over $350,000. Continuing to track over budget is our utilities, meaning our natural gas and electricity. They are, however, not projected to be as high as I had reported in Q2. They've come kind of under. We're about tracking at $64,000 over at this point. I believe in Q2 I had almost double that, so things are going in the right direction there. Between the two, though, we are looking at a small surplus at this point in time, which is a good thing. Moving on to utilities, we had a lot of discussion about this already, and I do have a few numbers to throw at you. You'll notice the numbers in utilities, so while we are 75% of the way through the year, all the data only goes till August just because of the timing of this report. So we have recognized 6.08 million, or 66% of the budget in revenue, and 5.82 million in expenses, or 63% of the budget, but we have not collected for September billing as of yet. Looking at our water loss and I&I, our water is down almost 10% from last year, and wastewater is down 7%. The dollar value to this is 432,000 over 2024. Moving on to capital, just some project status. We had 31 total projects. 8 projects are still in progress, 19 have been completed, and 4 have not started. Next, we have our council remuneration. Overall, council is tracking where you should be at this point in time. You have overall 30, I can't even read my own slide, 31% remaining at 75% of the year, so typically that would be at 25%, obviously. There is a more detailed financial report that would be available on our website. And then looking ahead, we're continuing to develop our capital planning documents. Council will see the first versions of those during the 2026 budget deliberations. And then as we move into 2026, our focus will shift to the long-term financial plan and developing customer service standards to guide how we deliver services to our residents. And with that, I would open to any questions.
Thank you, Director Lindeman. Are there any questions from council? Councilor Blatz. Going to be starting things off today.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and through you to Director Linderman. On our Fortis franchise fees tracking under budget, can you just give us a brief explanation on that? I know that they send us what they think we will use and we budget based on their numbers. Is that the reason for what we're seeing, that we're not tracking on budget?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mayor Dahl and then Councilor Wilson.
Well, it's an odd question, but when you speak to the public with regards to information technology tickets, can you explain to them what those tickets are used? Like, they're not tickets as we would give tickets on the street. Can you
Right.
explain, please, to the public?
When I'm talking about IT tickets, it is our internal system. So any of our employees are having any problems with any of their IT, could be printers, software, hardware, whatever. It is now being all tracked through our ticketing system, so that we're able to then have these indicators of how much work is actually going through that department.
Council, thank you. Councilor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to the Director. Just wondering if my memory is correct, the federal government removed the carbon tax, April, May-ish of this year. I assume that would have had a beneficial impact to the town in terms of its operations. I thought previously we'd thrown numbers around where we budget about $700,000. Are you able to talk to how, where we would be seeing that impact, if at all, in our financial results to date?
So you are correct. The carbon tax was removed earlier in the year, but no, not 700,000. I'd have to look at my stuff, but I want to say 34,000 was what we pay a year in natural gas.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Cummings and Councilor Daly.
Thank you, Chair. So just, I know it's a current situation, but let's take a look and see if we can get an answer. The media has put a lot of attention lately on the postal strike and the potential decrease in service of the postal service. On page 33 of the package, we see the statistics for pre-authorization payment plan and e-billing as of third quarter. I know the strike is relatively just in its second week or third week. Are we seeing any uptake that could be coordinated for that issue? And is it something that we could be even advertising as a reason for people switching over to e-billing and pre-authorized payment, that the future of our postal service is not guaranteed, but e-billing is a little bit more consistent anyways?
Yes, definitely. So we are currently advertising, just in regards to the postal strike and to sign up for e-billing. That is the first postal strike is where we got, the 10% increase in our current e-billing. And as of yet, we haven't noticed, but, once utility bills that week, they go out next week. So once you see that leg, then we'll see that increase again, I'm quite certain.
Thank you, Director Lindeman. And hopefully we can put that on our website and social media page. If that's
Yep,
already there.
It is on there.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and through you to Director Linderman. Going to page 34 and talking about our grants. Our numbers are down slightly as far as submitted grants, and I'm just wondering, is there a lack of availability of grants going forward? Has the provincial and federal government reduced those numbers that we can apply for? Or is there still an abundance of grants that are available to us that we apply for? And of course, with that, then, are they becoming more stringent on their requirements for those grants as well going forward? Obviously, just your insight, not, yes.
As far as grant availability, no, I don't think it's changed any. Like I said, we are waiting on 4 still, so of those 5, so do have 7 out there right now that we're waiting on, right? So we submitted 3, waiting on 4 others. As far as the requirements, yes, federal grants are massive undertakings to write. There's a lot that goes into those.
Thank you, Director Lindeman. And Councillor Blatz. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. And just through you back to Director Linderman, perhaps maybe too what we could do as far as our utility bills. I have seen it on both the website and on social media, and I know it'll come out in the paper, but maybe perhaps we could do a radio announcement or something saying that people could, you know, what the situation is, and perhaps if they want to sign up for either e-billing, or I don't know if they can even come up here and pick up their bills or something, but just so people are aware they've got an option. It was just a suggestion.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And just through you to the Director, just a quick question, not significant or material, but you referenced a $100,000 increase in our tax receivable. I'm just wondering, is that kind of just a phasing? Is that due to installment tax plan, or is that actual arrears, potential pending collection activity? Can you comment? Thank you.
A little bit of it will be because we have had an increase in our pre-authorized over 2024, so a little bit is due to that for sure. But I think also a lot of it is to do with the economic, where we're sitting as a community.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I just have, Council. I just have maybe a question with regards to going back to what Council Daly had about grants, and that is, with the province now requiring municipalities to forward any federal grants they're applying for, does that create difficulties in making the application even longer than before?
It creates an extra step, right, and an extra waiting period for everything because you have to wait for that approval.
And does that affect the deadline for those grants? Because I know sometimes the federal government says you've got to apply by X number of days or a certain date, and then you've got to go to the province too. So will that be harmful for us going through?
It hasn't at this point. The turnaround has been, when I say fairly quick, I mean a couple weeks from the province. So it's not awful, but it definitely is something that could happen. Yep.
Council Daly, did you have a motion or a council? Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I move that Council accepts the Corporate Services Quarterly Report as presented for information.
Thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We'll go on to number 3D, which is the Budget 2026 engagement. CO Williams.
Thank you once again, and Director Lindeman is going to lead us through this topic as well.
Thank you. You get more of me. So, between June 16th and July 17th, we had 318 residents participate in the 2026 budget engagement. With those 318 residents, we received 500 comments, just of people ranking and residents ranking their priorities across our municipal services, infrastructure, safety, and recreation. First up, we had our top priorities. The top community priorities continue to be public works and public safety. These were followed closely by recreation facilities, economic development, planning and development, and parks and trails. Let's skip through here. Moving to protective services, with public safety, residents identified their top RCMP priorities as property crime at 80% and drug enforcement at 67%. For municipal enforcement, traffic safety and speeding was top priority, with unsightly properties and noise following closely behind. Moving to infrastructure renewal, nearly 65% of respondents said the town should continue prioritizing infrastructure renewal, even if it meant delaying other projects. The top needs identified within infrastructure renewal were road resurfacing and pothole repair, water and sewer system upgrades, and improved snow and ice control. This feedback confirms that council's focus on investing in core infrastructure is supported by the community. Moving to public works. When asked about the current condition of our roads, most residents ranked them between a 5 and a 7 out of 10, suggesting that there is some room for improvement there. Snow removal received mixed results. Neighborhood services were rated quite low, while snow removal on main corridors scored between a 6 and an 8. Our waste collection services rated higher overall, though some comments focused on expanding our composting options and recycling services. Moving to planning and development. Kept up here. Residents emphasized the importance of responsible growth with 189 responses and more affordable housing options with 139 responses. Comments highlighted the need for improved walkability, better access for mobility devices, upgraded sidewalks and trails, and consideration of future public transportation options. Overall, this survey continued the trend from other public engagement, showing a need for more attainable housing options in Olds. Council's housing strategy and the ongoing land use bylaw review are the two key pieces that attempt to advance this goal for us. Moving on to our recreation facilities. A key question in this year's engagement was the future of the Sportsplex. Nearly half, at 49%, prefer maintaining our current facility, 12% supported expansion, and 39% want to begin planning for a new facility. In Centennial Park, residents' top project priorities include upgraded washrooms at 47%, adding seating or benches at 42%, playground improvements 35%, and creating a performance space at 26%. At our aquatic center, ratings were mixed, generally ranging from a 5 to an 8 out of 10. With a few comments calling for improved maintenance and more consistent or extended operating hours there. I'll move on now just to communications and engagement. So when it comes to staying connected, residents prefer updates through social media and the town website, and there was a growing interest in our new Amplifier newsletter. Public surveys remain the preferred way for residents to provide input, with 73% choosing this as their preferred feedback method. Overall, our results confirm that Council's focus on infrastructure renewal, fiscal responsibility, and long-term growth are well aligned with the community's expectations. Road repair and maintenance is certainly the most prevalent area for a focused improvement. The full engagement report will be posted on our website for residents to review in further detail.
Thank you, Director Lim. Are there any questions? There aren't any questions? Comments? Okay, going to Councilor Cummings first, and then Councilor Butt.
Well, I just have a comment, and I think I alluded to it earlier when we talked about the brood and economic development side of things here. So we have only a limited source of input from information. These surveys are got to be the number one response, right? This is the epitome of everything we're asking about what you want us to do with your money. So getting the most respondents possible helps so that we can create policy created on this document. And a lot of our policies created on this document. And when we see now in our 4th year of term where these policies we've had since day one, and even 4 years later, we're still getting good comments and positive influence that these are the ways we're going ahead. So it's good positive reinforcement for us saying that we are on the right track for many of the policies that we have in place. I know that I ran originally on a no more potholes, no more flowers until all the potholes were fixed. Still no more flowers until there's no more potholes to be fixed. But we had to put a little bit lower of a priority on the road work while we focused on the wastewater and sewer, wastewater and freshwater issues, especially the environmental issues that the CAO brought up earlier, and boil water orders and flooding farmers' fields is never a good result. We're supposed to be a world-class town. Can't call ourselves a world-class town if we don't have solid drinking water and solid sewer. So I'm very encouraged by the results of this survey showing where we need to improve a little bit and where we need to, or where we're on the right track. So good work. Hopefully the next council looks at this and says, hey, that's a good platform to run on. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings, Councillor Blatz, and then Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. And I have just a couple of comments, and I read through all of the commentary that was provided through this budget survey, and some of them, I mean, I've heard several comments, similar comments from people all throughout this, but my question is, are we going to utilize any of these comments and we used to do a did you know, and I don't know that we need to actually do a did you know, but are we going to use any of these comments for an educational tool piece that maybe we could say, for example, when they talk about snow removal on Highway 27 and 2A, those are not the town's responsibility. Those are Alberta Transportation's, and just some further communication on some of these points. I'm wondering if this could be looked at some point in time. I realize that we run on a pretty skeletal staff in the communications department, but perhaps we could utilize some of these comments as a learning tool and an education tool. Does CO Williams fine?
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, we do use this budget survey to try to tease out some of those details and perhaps highlight some things that we missed or there's a misunderstanding. So most definitely, I think one thing, and I'm not the right person to phrase social media posts, but it goes back, I believe, to a question Councillor Daly had during Director Pager's report, and something Councillor Cummings just said too. When it comes to like pothole repair, the budget is, during council's term, there has not been much of an overlay budget, as we call it, when we look at an entire block or more of asphalt and we rip that up and we repave it fresh. That's because we've been focused on the infrastructure under the streets. And I mean, obviously, the next incoming council and future councils will have their own say on what they do with that money. But I can't see us going to that route either until we see the pipes improve. But how do we explain that, obviously, because people are very much concerned about the state of their roads, as they should be, but there is a pretty good reason on why we're not doing, say, large-scale asphalt repairs, because our money is being focused on the things that you can't see under the road. Doesn't make it any better, but that's why we have talented comms people to figure out how to phrase questions like that. But to your point, most definitely, I think this is certainly a tool we use to try to create more informative social media communications.
And perfect, and thank you. I do totally agree that our comms department goes above and beyond on many different occasions, but I do think that another example I was going to use was that very one about potholes. There's no point in fixing a road till we know what's underneath of it is working in top-notch condition.
Thank you, Councillor Blatz, and on to Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Not a question, just a comment. Page 76, when it talked about town experience and satisfaction ratings, I think certainly the two categories that stick out for me were the responsiveness and the follow-up. And so just perhaps, obviously something to certainly be aware of, and maybe an opportunity going forward for us to look at as far as those two particular drivers. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead, Mayor Dahl, then if you're ready for a motion. Thank you.
Seeing no more questions, thank you for that. I'll just, I so move that the council accepts the 2026 budget engagement as presented. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item. Although, does anybody want a break since it's
I
going
was
to
just
be,
going to ask if we could take a short
it might be a
stretch
little
break.
bit long of a session, and I apologize for the staff that just came in to join us on that, but let's just take a 5-minute break and we'll come back. Yeah, I gotta go to the bathroom. Okay, guys, thank you very much for your patience on the break, and now we're back, and we're going to deal with item number 3E, which is Municipal Development Plan and the Land Use Bylaw Project discussion. We're on page 104. So, Sia Williams, please start us off.
Indeed. Thank you again, Deputy Mayor. Manager of Planning Infrastructure, James. He wishes. James Crozier is going to lead us off here.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. After the public hearing was held last month, administration has prepared several different options for council that we feel reflects some of the concerns we heard at that public hearing, primarily related to the RTD district. I'm going to pass it over to Kyle Sloan, who's going to go into it in more depth than I will. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we get into those discussions that are on screen, because I do expect they will dominate the discussion on these two bylaws today, I did want to highlight a couple of other things that the land use bylaw is looking to accomplish, just so they don't get lost amid the what we'll be talking about later. And I do look forward to that discussion. Just a couple of other things. So the draft land use bylaw looks to remove contradictory regulations that have emerged over the last 2 decades and a bit of amendments to one document, where we end up with definitions and regulations that cannot both be true, but because there are 300 or 400 amendments and they get inserted into a document without being able to fully capture everything else. An example is we have a definition for hard landscaping and a definition for landscaping, hard, and they say the exact opposite. It's almost word for word the same, but they actually do have the opposite. So which one is it? We are looking to, part of that is improving clarity, readability, and navigability of the document, both for municipal staff who have to use it every day, but also for applicants, developers, and the general public who use it much less frequently. We want people to be able to navigate that and understand what they're reading as much as possible. And then, of course, we're always here to provide more clarity and have conversations with anybody. It looks to consolidate some commercial uses and reduce red tape for new businesses that are trying to start up. An example of this is the definition of the general commercial, and then it breaks down into different sizes. But for example, right now, if a retail business closes and somebody wants to open up a hair salon in that same building, they're not doing any renovations. They're just wanting to start a new business, maybe change the sign on the outside. They have to go through all the permitting process. So for those, what you would think of as standard commercial units, say on Main Street, things like that, those are general commercial. They fall under an umbrella, so they don't have to do a development permit. Anything that we've deemed should have more discussion and permitting and regulations and oversight still has its own definition, and it will still have the standard development permit process. We're looking to improve consistency with regulations and minimize gray areas so that the bylaw is more clear about what is allowed on a property and what is needed for permit approvals, so that when people read the bylaw, they understand what they need to do. We get applications that are more complete. We're able to issue those approvals more efficiently and more quickly, and people can get started with their project. We're looking to increase community consultation for applications that require variances. Currently, we do circulate notices to neighbors when a variance is approved, and then they have the opportunity to appeal. But unlike discretionary uses where we circulate for comment prior to the decision, we don't currently do that with variances. We're looking to make sure we do that, and we have. It does extend some timelines, but we do want to make sure that we're as transparent as possible and that the people most affected by development have an opportunity for input prior to a decision. And staying with variances, we're looking to improve or increase the level of scrutiny for variance applications. Currently, applicants don't really have to provide a rationale for why a variance should be approved. Instead, the development authority, whether it's administration or council, has to go through the bylaw looking for reasons why it shouldn't be approved. So we're shifting an onus onto the applicant so that they can tell us why and convince and look to convince us why their variance would either not negatively impact neighbors, why it provides community benefit. There's myriad reason why it could be approved or why it should be supported, but it's on the applicant now, or it will be on the applicant to provide that argument. And that's it for these other smaller things. Back to the item in the agenda, we do have a couple of different options for some key decisions that before we bring this back for second and third readings, we're seeking some direction from council on a couple of key items. So the first one being the RTD district and specifically how it relates to properties that are currently zoned R1 in the current bylaw. There are a couple different options for that decision that we'd like some decision or some direction on. The reason for this is in order to do second and third reading next week, we want to have an idea of the amendments that will be made. And we've always known since first reading that there will be amendments that will be made before the final adoption. We want to be able to work with our project team to make sure that we're prepared for the discussion that will happen and that we can quickly present amendments that council has directed us to work on. And then there's another one regarding suites and the approval authority for suites, the number of suites on certain properties in certain zones, things like that. So that is really what we're looking for direction on today that's in the package, and I look forward to having that conversation right now and taking any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sloan, for that. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions, so I think what I'd like to do would be just to go in order. So start at one end and then go to the other, and then if you've got a second one on your end, we'll go back around. And I think that's probably the best way to do it so that everybody has a say in it. I think that there's going to be good discussions going around the table. So we'll start with Councilor Cummings.
Dang, I thought you were going to start with the other guy. I'm looking through the three options, and I see option 3, and I think option 3 is new. I've seen option 1 and option 2 before, but option 3, I like option 3. The reason why I like option 3, as many of you know, I'm a strong proponent of ARPs and ASPs, and the fact that the ARP particularly is your neighborhood protection plan. That's the plan that's created to protect your community's integrity and the way you want your neighborhood to look like in the future. And it is extremely powerful of a document. It's much more powerful of a document than the land use bylaw, as it supersedes the land use bylaw in your neighborhood. If you want your doors on your side of the street, but only the odd numbered doors to be red and the even numbered doors to be green, the area redevelopment plan is where you have the power to do that. Area redevelopment plans have hundreds of hours of community engagement to develop. Currently, we have 2, East Olds and Uptown Olds redevelopment plans. I know that we've asked a budgetary consideration in the next budget to include a third one, which is the area west of Uptown to 57th Avenue, Highway 27 South, which is seeing significant infill development. Needed a plan 10 years ago. We've also, this council's also passed a resolution to direct reviews of all of the ASPs and ARPs every 10 years for relevance, because it's important that we have current and up-to-date plans. It's my goal that hopefully the next council continues this process on ARP development so that all of our neighborhoods are protected in this manner. So I like it here in option 3, that it does control the use of row, duplex, and fourplexes in a community that is designated RTD, where it doesn't currently have an area redevelopment plan and area structure plan. That should encourage us all to develop ARPs and ASPs into, well, sorry, ARPs, because ASPs are created before development begins. But the ARP is our neighborhood development plan. I was speaking a moment ago with our development team here, suggesting a name change from area structure plan to neighborhood redevelopment plan, because these are our neighborhood protection plans. They are purpose-built and purpose-designed and purpose-legislated to protect our neighborhood's integrities, as the community themselves and the neighborhoods want them done, whereas the land use bylaw is an overreaching umbrella-type document that is not designed to protect our neighborhood's integrities. So I like option 3 because it does show the right way to go, and that's the way I'll support any amendment on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Cummings. And for further information, let's just stick with the first options, talking about the RTD district, and then we can go on to the secondary suites. So that we've got.
That is exactly what I just did.
Yeah,
Option 3 is an RTD option.
No, I know that. I know
Okay.
that. I just, for further, as we go all around the council chambers, just so that everybody knows, let's deal with one issue at a time. Councilor Walsh.
Thank you, Heather. I like option 2, where R1 remains a distinct district. It just makes more sense for a community that has grown up with an R1 designation for vast majority of things. And changing that, I think, is just like pulling the rug out under people who, especially recent purchasers within the community, thinking that they were buying into R1 and discovering that within months they could be into a whole different zone. But it also allows the use of RTD, and density is an important growth part of our community, and I think future, I'm more into, grandfathering in R1, any new development, RTD. And I know a lot of the argument is affordable housing, attainable housing, and I see no economic ability to make it affordable by going RTD and all of this. I've done a deep dive into this. Cost of housing has gone up 150 to 160% in the last 20, 25 years. Incomes have only gone up maybe 50, 54%. That increase, that difference, is actually mostly from speculation. People who speculate. And when you start changing zoning, it offers the opportunity for more speculation. 40 to 60-year-old home is probably the cheapest rental home in the community. You turn that into a duplex, all of a sudden you've got 2 medium-priced homes and you've lost a low-cost home. So, yeah, R1 remains a district, and option 2 would be my choice on this.
Thank you, Councilor Walsh, and we'll move on to Councilor Daly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I prefer option 2 as well, that R1 remains a distinct district, but with the same reasoning as what Councilor Walsh has indicated, that it would be, well, we've got to deal with the people that have bought a home in R1, and I believe we need to keep our end of the deal up as far as they bought thinking that they were buying in a residential family development, family neighborhood, and they were not expecting to have any multi-suite units built within their subdivision or district. And so I would agree with option number 2. But going along with that, I also feel that when we go to the RTD, we need to have a caveat in there saying, as the development officer has indicated, we need to have a better way of informing the public of what's going on in the other districts as well. And then going along with what Councillor Cummins says, we also need to have these updated ARPs in place so that your districts are protected. And your ARPs are the document that's going to do that. And those need to be in place for future going forward as well, to designate what these districts are going to look like going forward. So R2 would be oh, and the discretionary use. I also like the option of the discretionary use for multiplexes in the RTD, that they do fit in. Just because we're lumping R2s and R3s into RTDs, I still believe that we need some discretionary uses that are described out in the application process and informing the public more of what's coming to be built down their street. So my option is option 2.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. And as you all know from the email I think I sent about September 17th, this is option 2 is my preferred choice. And a lot of the things that I'm hearing back on is an issue with parking and the mistakes that both the City of Calgary and the City of Edmonton have perceived to have made with introducing what more of a blanket type zoning. But I really do believe that this is something that I can support and will support as option 2. And we already know that going forward, the next council will, in fact, look at and review all of the ARPs and ASPs, and probably, you know, and that at that time there will be a significant amount of public engagement, because there has to be public engagements because those are regulatory plans. So I can and will support option 2.
Thank you, Councillor Blatz. On to Mayor Dahl.
Well, that's very interesting, because I also had gone over this quite a few times this morning. Like, I won't tell you how early, but anyways, I always ended up back at option 2. And my reasoning for that was also because the multiplexes would remain a discretionary use. And I believe that that's what helped me make my final decision. So I would support option 2.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. My comments will be brief. I certainly, yes, if I'm going to support any of the options, support option 2. I am very aware of trying, we have the statements around preserving the integrity and the character of certain neighborhoods, and for the most part, certain neighborhood would certainly be East Olds. I'm wary of, for lack of a better word, giving the keys to developers. And I know when I hear and I realize the ARP and or an ASP or a neighborhood development plan would provide some sort of a guardrail. But it's going to take us some time to get all that in place. The East Olds redevelopment plan, I think, is at least 2014, if not older. Some areas in our town do not have any type of ASP and or ARP. So it's going to take a while to get those documents in place. And I do certainly like the aspect of the discretionary component. I try and balance, quick, nimble, agile, and being able to react with, as the survey said, eliminating red tape and trying to be administratively less burdensome. But I also think this council's done a good job of trying to incent and get development going. We do meet fairly regularly, so to put in a discretionary component, and I would ideally like to see that discretionary aspect reside with council. At the end of the day, we're the ones that are accountable to the residents in this town. I do weigh that against being quick, nimble, agile, and getting decisions in place. But ultimately, we are accountable to the residents, and the discretionary aspect for sure, ideally with council. So I support option 2.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. And just for my final comments, well, I shouldn't say final. Final comments on this, I suppose. I also support option 2. I think we definitely need to protect the character of our community, so this way it will be, especially with the multiplexes being part of the discretionary use, and agree with Councillor Wilson on. And I was going to actually add that as well, that council be the authority, the development authority on that discretionary use. Because ultimately it does come down to our decision. We take the flack from the community if they're unhappy, and certainly it should be a burden that is put onto the shoulders of council. We're here to make those tough decisions, and I think that this would be one of them in the future. So I would go to option 2 because I think that that's the way it's going, going to protect our neighborhood flavor. I also agree with Councilor Cummings that we do need to make sure that we have these ARPs in place and the ASPs. Those are going to take time. So they're not going to be something that's going to be able to happen overnight. And this way, by going option 2, we'll be able to protect our communities right now. And then as we develop and as we grow, we'll make sure that those ASPs are certainly in place for every new development as required by legislation. Anyway, thank you. Let's move along to, so now that you've got that clear, I guess there was 6, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favor of option 2, and 6, oh, sorry, 6 in favor. Sorry, I didn't write down Councillor Wilson on my list. So there's 6 in favor of option 2, and 1 for option 3. So we'll move on now to the next series of questions, which was the secondary suites. And then after that, we'll follow up on any other comments that people have about changes they'd like to see to the bylaw before it comes for second reading at the next council. If that's okay, we'll start with Councillor Wilson on the secondary suites.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I am looking at, just trying to refresh, look at my notes. Option 2 is where I would reside. First secondary suite is permitted, and the second suite is discretionary. Again, that discretion would reside with council.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. That was fairly brief for you. Mayor Dahl.
I think mine might be just as brief. I actually had option 1 and 2. It took me about a little bit to make a final decision, but I did settle with option 2. Option 1, I found that there might be too many, it might take some time to try and get through what those drafts would look like. So I would stick with option 2.
Mayor Dahl and Councillor Batts.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and I had picked option 2, and I do believe that the first secondary suite, which would be permitted, would be fine, but a secondary suite would be discretionary, would come probably back to council, where I think that that's where the decision should be made. And again, I think that we have to take into consideration parking as an issue, because that seems to be a big concern with many of our residents. And I know living in a cul-de-sac how condensed and congested parking can become.
Yes, I agree with you on that one. Councillor Daly.
Thank you. Councillor Blatz kind of took the words out of my mouth there. I would also go with option 2. First secondary suite is permitted, and the second one discretionary of the council. Just because not one size fits all when it comes to this, when it comes to parking and accommodation within the neighborhood, I believe that should be looked at in the eyes of the public and also through the council. So I'm going with option 2.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh.
Actually, my preference would be option 1. 1 external, 1 internal secondary suite is permitted. And I think a lot of the questions can be dealt with in the way the bylaw is written. It just allows staff to really look at needs to be done, especially when we are talking these type of suites. The ask is out there that more rental space be available, and I see this as the quickest and easiest way of doing it with very little impact on the community.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Councillor Cummings.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I actually had more issues with secondary suite development than I did with the whole rest of the land use bylaw, because it's a very contradictory option in my head. I live in an area of town near 42nd Street as a perfect example where there is a ton of secondary suites. And people talk about R3 and parking. I don't see an R3 parking problem, but I see a secondary suite parking problem. You cannot drive 2 minis down that street for the parking on the street because of the excessive number of secondary suites that are in that neighborhood. It is horrendous for parking. So the only type of housing development I see a parking issue with is secondary suites in our communities. We want to ban 4 plexes into communities that are R1, but we go with option 1 and we can have basically a threeplex, 3 families living in one R1 house with a secondary suite internal, secondary suite external. That's two families or 2 groups of people plus the people in the primary residence. That's 3, so that's a threeplex. So I'm absolutely against 1, because if we don't want 4 plexes in our communities of R1 development, we certainly don't want a threeplex, which is the same situation as secondary suites in this type. I'm actually for option 4 personally, and allowing our area redevelopment plans to control secondary suite developments in our neighborhoods. Each neighborhood is different, each street is different, each block on a street is different. And the area redevelopment plans are where that can be better focused rather than an overall plan like this one, which really, I think it's been said once before, every neighborhood's different, every community is different, and having those secondary suites carte blanchely around is a challenge for me. So I'm actually, obviously, option 2 is going to win this one, same as it did last time. I'm personally in favor of option 4. I think we need to reconsider the idea of what does it look like if we have 2 secondary suites in an R1 development. We just contradicted ourselves from our straw poll on RTD allowing 4 plexes into R1 development, because this does the exact same thing. So we got to remember, a secondary suite doesn't mean 1 college kid, right? It could be a family. It could be a married couple with small children, whatever. We can't control how many people live in a secondary suite, right? So I'm all for option 4. Obviously, I'm going to accept option 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Cummings. And actually, I'd look like I'm interested in option 5, which is not there, which would be 1 secondary suite discretionary and a 2nd secondary suite discretionary. So if they wanted to add a 2nd one, my problem is exactly what Councilor Cummings has just said, is the fact that you do have some streets that are totally congested just with the families that are there. You know, you do drive over to where Councilor Cummings lives, and I know that I go up and down that street quite often. And, you know, you're holding your breath sometimes driving down that road. If you've got another car coming your way, you've got to pull over. There's just no way. I live in an area in the Vistas where the streets are wider than hell. But, you know, you don't have any problem really with additional parking. But in some areas, you do. And so I would like to see an option, I guess my option would be number 4 because of that. And that the discretionary still remain with council because, again, those are hard decisions, and we take the flack. So we might as well be the ones making those hard decisions, as opposed to leaving it on the shoulders of our administration. So I guess you've got your your work cut out for you. Right now, you've got 4 for option 2. You've got 2 for option 4, and 1 for option 1. So we'll. Well, I would have voted for 5, but that 5's not there. So okay. You can, yeah. We'll add a 5th on there. Anyway, so there's hopefully you've got direction then to bring it back to council. You've got a majority there. Okay, so then I'm going to open it up for anything else you'd like to speak on, Mr. Sloan or Mr. Crozier, with regards to the land use bylaw before we get into other areas of concern that might be brought up by council.
Yeah, I can just add, because we just finished or are still in that secondary suite conversation, because the first decision seemed to go with option 2, where we will still have some form of, or it's likely we'll have some form of an R1 district still. The secondary suite question could then be split, where you answer that question for RTD and then you answer it separately for R1. And they might be different answers. So that's something we can work out. We've started to draft a hypothetical R1 district that would be inserted into this draft bylaw because we saw the direction things were going. And yeah, that once the bones, the skeleton of the district is there, it's easy to move things around into different columns of how they get approved. So no problem there.
I have a quick question for you before we move on to secondary suites, since I just see Councilor Cummings does as well. Is there any requirement to address the parking that both myself and Council Cummings and some of the other councilors have brought up? I think Council Platts also raised the parking. If we're looking at option 2, and the parking is so congested in those areas, would that be one of the areas that would be, a no for the discretionary for a second suite? Or even when you, so when they do a secondary suite as a first, when you go to option number 2, you've got first secondary suite is permitted. If there's a problem with the parking in that area, what's the development authority's position on that if it's already permitted?
Thank you for the question. So as a permitted use, and we do still have minimum parking that would need to be added to the property or accommodated on the property for a secondary suite. In the draft bylaw, it's the same as it currently is, 1 parking spot per suite. For if it's a permitted use and they've met that, we can't really implement too many conditions or add too many conditions to the approval. As a discretionary use, and as a permitted use, if they're meeting all the regulations, we have to approve it.
Okay.
As a discretionary use, yes, we have discretion, and we can consider that.
Thank you. Councilor Cummings, did you have, oh, sorry, CEO Williams?
Sorry, James. Yeah, thank you. Just to add on that too. So picking streets, I understand there's different problems on different streets. For example, in the street that's mentioned, Councillor Cummings mentioned 42nd Street. The age and design of the street obviously matters in terms of the congestion. Also, it's important to specify whether it's secondary suites causing the problems or the current demographic and socioeconomic conditions. Right now, for instance, and I don't have data in front of me, but what we're seeing in, let's say, our housing data collection is that a lot of young people are living at home longer or returning home longer. That obviously has a parking effect, and we can't legislate our way around that. Also, communities change just like we all change. Kids move out, you stay in a 4-bedroom house by yourself longer. So it's not so much trying to, I don't know, preempt or solve every scenario we can think of how a street can become too congested. For council, I would encourage you to stay at the level where your strategies are. We know that there's a housing problem. We get obviously pushback when we try to do 2-plexes, 4-plexes, 92-plexes. As Councillor Walsh alluded to, secondary suites, while not perfect, they are the quickest and perhaps most accessible means to increase rental housing stock, for example, without altering the neighborhood. Mr. Sloan just said the requirement currently that the town of Olds has and going forward is much higher than other communities. 1 parking stall per secondary suite on site. So that is, in administration's opinion, the best we can do if we're serious about trying to provide more flexibility to property owners, to neighborhoods, and to help balance that need versus existing neighborhood parking or congestion challenges.
Thank you. Well said. Councilor Cummings, you still have a question?
Yeah, absolutely. A question and a comment, or a comment and a question. So, yeah, and I brought up 42nd Street as a perfect example of that uniqueness of each individual block within our neighborhoods. I live on Silverthorne Road. If you go east of me, you'll see massive traffic congestion. Again, demographic issues and whatnot. My end of Silverthorne Road there's no congestion, hardly any street parking. So these neighborhood issues are block by block issues, and that's where the ARP system is such a great tool for that sort of demographic control. So that's my comment. My question is, I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, we made an amendment to the land use bylaw when it came to parking, on-site parking requirements for apartments, changing it from per unit to per bedroom. And I'm wondering if that might be a better option for our permitted secondary suite usage. I did mention earlier in my last comment that say you built a secondary suite in a basement that was a 3-bedroom unit, housing a family with children, that might require different parking requirements than, say, if you build a small bachelor pad in the same unit. So I'm wondering if any thought's been given to a similar program as we have with R3 development, a per bedroom parking requirement versus a per suite parking requirement. The one unit in particular that I'm thinking of, I can't remember where it was built exactly, but it was a secondary suite external to the main house, which is a in-law suite, which basically had a whole another family living in there with multiple vehicle parking requirements because of the type of family that moves into that type of structure. So I'm just thinking that might be a better option than the per suite thing. So I'm just asking if you guys have had any thoughts or consideration in that direction.
Good question. No, we haven't really had that conversation about kind of a tiered parking alignment for secondary suites. If that is a conversation council has and decides they'd like to see, it's fairly easy to implement that, because then in our parking table where we have apartments, we could just say apartments and suites fall under this. So it would be easy to do. It's not a conversation we really had on the project team.
Go ahead, Mr. Gerger.
Sorry, just to add on to what Kyle had said, the one potential issue I foresee is with those per bedroom parking numbers, it's always rounded up to the next or to the next number. So with a secondary suite, if you're looking at a 1.25 parking stalls or 1.5 or 1.75, those all would end up being rounded up to 2 stalls essentially, because those are the only stalls additionally required. Whereas if you're looking at 8, 10, 12 plexes, when you have 1.25, you're potentially rounding up a 8 to a 9, for example. So that would be something that we'd have to pay attention to a little bit, because you can't add half a stall, obviously.
Okay, thank you. Now, let's move on to any other questions. So we've got a fairly large document here. Are there other questions that members of council wanted to bring up? And Councilor Cummings has his hand up right away, so go for it, Mr. Cummings.
Thank you. Actually, it is brought up here in this nice little picture of the little green mark on the picture, and I know that during our public engagement, we had quite a number of questions about the concerns, more so about the willy-nilly commercial inclusion into the RTD zones. I'm personally in favor of this type of development under the restrictions that are in the land use bylaw, and I don't think there was quite a robust conversation on what's actually not allowed and what is allowed. So having lived across the country and traveled around the world, I see a lot of very healthy communities with a convenience store down at the corner. I remember as a child going off with my 25-cent allowance to the convenience store at the corner and getting my chips, pop, and candy bar. It used to only cost $0.25. So just like the picture presents there, that's the type of development I'd like to see inside our RTD development communities through the ASP or ARP program, which we again say only on the corner, you know, because that's where it should be rather than in the middle. So I am happy to see it being put into our R2, R3 type developments, or the RTD if we exclude R1 developments in that area, and again controlled by that ARP, ASP development process. I think it's a good idea. I certainly don't like having my 8-year-old grandson having to walk all the way to Uptown Market to grab himself a chocolate bar when he might be able to do it in his own neighborhood. I'm fully in support of that type of thing, so long as that list of what is permissible is robust and succinct and doesn't allow for anything else.
Thank you. Mayor Dahl.
Yes, I could support Councillor Cummings, I feel is correct. I know, for example, in Calgary, in Kensington, they're all along the main drag. Also, when I grew up in Marloop area, they were down there, and they're still there. But why can't we have something like that to have our children go to and walk to and ride their little bike to go get their penny candy? I'm sorry, it's not a penny anymore, but I would have to say the concept is nourishing for a small community with families.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, just briefly, I think idealistically, it's certainly nice to see that portrayal in that picture. I do agree with that approach, but we also have to be careful. And again, I'm very wary of development. And yes, we have the guardrails of ARP and ASP, but those can also be somewhat limiting in my understanding in terms of the use of shall and must and may, and ensuring again that we are remaining true to the neighborhood, whether that's in terms of the facade, the structure itself, and fitting in with the uniqueness of a community, maintaining the integrity of the community. So while conceptually I say, yeah, I don't have an issue with that, I think making sure we've got protective measures in place through whatever documents to make sure that we are adhering to some of our values around neighborhood development that is consistent with what the neighborhood is right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Daly.
Thank you. And I would agree with Councillor Wilson in that aspect that we need to have some guardrails around what and how many of these commercial entities would be allowed into a neighborhood, I believe, because, you know, there's 4 corners in a block and there can be 4 different businesses set up there, anywhere from the dime candy to whatever else. So I think we need to make sure that we put limitations on how many of these commercial entities are built in the neighborhoods, and then what they can be as well, because I wouldn't want liquor stores, cannabis shops, all those things coming in either, right? And so we need some, and I'm going to the extreme there, but I think that we do need to keep a handle on the type of businesses that would be in there. Thanks.
Thank you, C.R. Williams.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So to both Councillor Daly and Wilson's comments on the guardrails approach, those are in the bylaw, the uses, and this is a council discretionary use. But also, according to the first topic, the RTD, this will largely be new communities that don't exist yet. So protecting the fabric of existing communities is not really the topic of this, so to speak, unless future area redevelopment plans say amend it, like East Olds, for example. That area redevelopment plan calls for commercial uses along Highway 2A. But with the, so to speak, status quo or grandfathering of the R1 communities, this won't necessarily be an issue. So it's more of, I think, does council like the idea of future communities having the ability to design, corner stores into their future design? And I think largely it's been well received. In existing communities, not so much, but that's not what at hand. RTD will not affect R1 if your current preference for that zoning goes forward. The same thing with multiplexes, so to speak, in RTD. Future communities only, so as we're speaking of right now. And we also have to make sure we are not leaving developers at the whims of case-by-case decision-making, that for new communities, let's take north of here, for example, which is has a recent area structure plan. They would want some semblance of confidence before they invest money of what they're able to build. So just be cautious, even though council wants to protect existing communities. This is not that case. People who will buy into this future community will have lots of notice of what's going to be, could be built next to them. So if you want to go too prescriptive on what uses are allowed in future communities, you will be affecting the investment risk tolerance, whatever you want to call it, of those future developers. So I think we're hearing you loud and clear. You want to protect existing communities. I would be cautious to extend that reach into future communities without applying that lens of either the area redevelopment plan or some other metric. But just so we're clear, this is not for existing single-family communities.
Thank you, CEO. And Councilor Cummings, you had a comment?
Absolutely. So I can't remember the name of the area structure plan, but in the northwest or southwest corner of the town of Olds, there's a ASP, Chinook Meadows, that does actually have commercial units in the ASP plan. And that's what I was talking about. It was the area restructure plans and the area structure plans that allow for this type of community development. And again, if you're going to, the developer, if they ever develop that property, has sold that ASP to the residents who will be moving into that community, that there is that in there. And that's the power the ASP has to override the land use bylaw to say, we are going to put a commercial unit in here because that's what's been approved. It is a bylaw and it's been approved. And that's what I'm talking about, is the power of that ARP, ASP to create development that the neighborhood residents themselves want in their neighborhood, with some restrictions. Obviously, we don't want a gas station or, as Councillor Daly said, a cannabis store, a liquor store in our neighborhoods, right? We've got those in the commercial districts. So that's where I was going along, and I agree with you entirely that that ASP controlling our new development sites is where this sort of thing is going to be primarily seen.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I appreciate the comments around the table and from the CEO, but just trying to think again, a lot of my reference comes back to East Olds, but East Olds is essentially a hybrid, right? Like if we've got 8 zones or whatever we have, essentially there's all 8 zones in that small little geographic area. And we have R1, which if we go down this path and we say, okay, R1 is ring fenced or grandfathered, but adjacent to, butting into, or right next to those R1, is we do have some R2 district, which could potentially lead to that very eloquent picture on the screen. No? So what am I missing then?
CEO Williams.
So nothing council will approve in this land use bylaw will affect the zoning of East Olds, because East Olds is under an area redevelopment plan. That supersedes the land use bylaw. So that's, I think, where Councillor Cummings is so passionate about ARPs this meeting, that they do help, on one hand, add another layer of engagement to the community, but also more directly control the integrity or redevelopment. But for a commercial use to be approved on an R1 use in East Olds, for example, let's say the bylaw passes and next month someone wants to open John's convenience store on 51st Street next to 2 R1s. That's not possible, even though if the land use bylaw says it is, and that's, again, not the way it's worded based on your current discussion, the ARP would have to be amended first, and that involves a brand new consultation process. So I know it's fun to say what could go wrong in every available avenue, but it's not helpful to council's governance role here.
Thank you. Councillor Batts.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and thank you to CEO Williams, because I was just going to point out that both of these, the land use bylaw and the MDP, are living documents, and I would really encourage future council would look at these on a regular basis rather than have several hundred amendments to one document. And that would be my encouragement to administration and to this sitting council and perhaps the future council, that you put in place a plan that says within the one council term you will review the MDP, and then you will also review the land use bylaw maybe once every 7 years, maybe not every term, but it should be gone through with council, because if you look at the chart, the relationship to other plans, it strictly says the municipal development plan takes precedent over either the area structure plan or an area redevelopment plan, and then the land use plan bylaw comes into force. So we could go around the table and talk about a million what ifs, but we're not actually going to get any resolution to this today. It is a living document, as both of these are, and I think that this council needs to perhaps move along to a different topic of discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Blatz. CEO Williams.
And if it's last word, just to remind you, for this proposed commercial use in RTD districts, as it says in the 4th sentence, each of these applications are council discretionary. So future councils will see every single application coming forward. So that is as much, control as I think council could possibly have on this issue.
Thank you, CEO Williams, and I was going to mention that exact same thing. Okay, so we're done with that particular topic. Any other topics that you want to raise? Councillor Daly.
Thank you, and thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. But through you to Development Officer Kyle, you touched on this about informing the public and getting the communication out there, and we've heard it a few times at Coffee with Counselors about, construction happening on a site where people were not informed about what was going on, and so you do have to kind of take that with a bit of a grain of salt. But what in this land use bylaw are you proposing to increase that availability of information to the citizens in the surrounding area? There have been several suggestions that have been given to us from public, like as far as like a pre-development permit sign on the affected property to notify people to maybe look at the website that something's going to happen, or like some people say we do the mail out, but the mail out doesn't go to the right people. Things like that. That's one of the concerns that I do hear at the council with Coffee with Counselors. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we're talking more about increasing the types of applications that would get circulated prior to a decision. Both current and future, the draft bylaw, that would be true for discretionary uses. But currently for variances, it's not. So, for instance, at the end of August, there was an 8-plex came to council. And we did receive feedback prior to that meeting, just prior, but that was a permitted use with a variance. So that one, had council approved it, a notice would have gone out detailing what the variance was and the appeal process. Whereas the draft bylaw, in that situation, the community would have gotten a notice under the way it's drafted. They would have gotten a notice prior to council, so more people would have learned about it before a decision was made and been able to provide their input. When you also hear perhaps from some people that they didn't hear about it, we do have a specific radius that we circulate to that's adjacent and anybody within 20 meters of a subject parcel. On larger parcels, that means we circulate to dozens of people, but on smaller, if it's a single family like lot, we might only circulate to 5 or 6 different landowners around it. And then there are people, it gets subjective when you start talking about who is affected, because some people 100 meters away might think, well, they are affected. And when our policy was put in place for this 20-meter radius, that was part of the discussion. Council was presented, this is a previous council, but they were presented with, I think, 3 or 4 different options for how we should circulate to try to eliminate that gray area of who is affected, who should get these notices, and that's where we landed.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Chair. So along the lines that Councillor Daly just brought up here, and I hate comparing ourselves to the city of Calgary, but I was driving through the city of Calgary yesterday, and I saw that when they do a zoning change, they actually put a placard or a sign up at the site that they're going to be doing a zoning change, highlighting the area, the map on the local map, what this area is being changed to, and some general information as well as some contact information on where they could get more information. And I don't want to get down into the procedural weeds with communication, but I agree with Councillor Daly. We have heard a lack of communication in this development because, again, as you stated, just because you live 200 meters away from something being done, we aren't communicating with you on purpose. So these signs might be a little bit better of a way, especially when we deal with zoning changes, because that isn't a purpose change to the use of that land. So we might do something like that, on-site signs, just with a QR code, sending it to administration, I don't think that could be put necessarily into the land use bylaw, but into those procedures that you will develop after the land use bylaw is passed, adjusting for those changes. So I just want that to be heard, that there are some, we are growing and we are seeing more changes to our communities, and that might be a better way to communicate it than the restricted, you have to be an adjacent person to get an actual letter out there. This gives them an opportunity to, if they feel that they're concerned, they can reach out to us, and it'll show that something is happening to that property. Just an idea.
Thank you, CEO Williams.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And just on the topic itself, so their circulation generally happens when there is a discretionary or variance use. For permitted uses, circulation just doesn't occur. So rezonings, for example, we have our statutory advertising requirements. We currently do the newspaper, social media on our website. If council wants us to go further, obviously we can discuss that, bring back a budget kind of estimate, et cetera, et cetera. But I believe Councillor Daly's description is kind of the age-old problem. If we take the 92-unit building that's going to the south side of the fire hall, that land was zoned with R3, so high density, for lack of a better word, for 20, 25 years in that realm. It sold. The developer in question did not need any variances. They met all of the height and parking, etc. So no notification went out. What we heard as well here, that people just didn't like it because they didn't know about it or they disagreed with the use. That is the age-old question that municipalities face, right? That if someone's going to spend $1 million on a piece of property, they kind of want to know what they're allowed to build. So I believe there is that pushback of people want to be notified so they could perhaps appeal it, for example. So I think we have to do a better job educating at the same time that 92-unit building, for example, because there was no variances on that, it actually wasn't appealable. The province gives no mechanism for people who don't like it to appeal it, regardless of what notification's out there. So happy to bring this topic back here. This land use bylaw is probably not the best place for such a granular type of avenue or topic, but it's something we have always struggled with. But if council has better ideas, certainly it's something we can test out.
Yep, thank you very much, CEO Williams. And certainly because it was a permitted use, there was no mechanism for an appeal at all. You're 100% correct on that. Any other questions that might move in a different direction? You have a different direction?
Different direction.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Daly.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I just going back into the final draft that you've given us here, and I'm not sure what page it is on. 287 pages. I kind of lost track of where it was, but on the chart, on the district chart, I noticed that you had the majority of it all X'd out now, or red lines through it. Are we going to see a new chart then coming forward? Like the majority of the different districts are all edited, I guess, red with a line through them. So I'm just wondering what we may see there going forward.
So what will be presented in the agenda package at second and third reading will not have any amendments in it from the public hearing. Because to make any amendments to the bylaws, there would be motions, and that's where we want to try to have those prepared, and then each amendment would have a motion so that we can piece by piece make sure nothing is getting missed. The redlined documents that you're seeing today, I do believe our consultant made those redlined edits based on the public hearing. But what will be presented at council will not have the red line, I believe, or it will be both. There will be a red line version and a full version without that.
Okay, any other questions, Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and just, yeah, changing the direction a little bit. Just a question around signs and signage. I have heard from local businesses concerns around the restrictions with those signs. I just want to confirm, because for some businesses, many businesses, that's a low-cost, effective way of advertising and promotion. So my understanding from the land use bylaw is sandwich board signs, there would be no restriction. And those kind of four-leg signs that you see throughout town, primarily along Highway 27, those would require a permit for 180 days. And the way to legalize that type of sign would be to anchor it somehow, some way. And so can you just confirm sandwich board signs are not part of any restriction? And what does anchoring, how simple a solution is acceptable to the development officers? Thank you.
Great question, thank you. So yeah, I can confirm sandwich boards, A-frames, T-frames, there's so many different types, but the smaller portable signs that are generally put out every day, maybe pulled back in, we are more or less removing regulation of that type of sign, and no permitting would be required. The regulation for that, I guess, would be limited to making sure it's anchored so it doesn't fly into traffic, things like that, whether it's sandbags or chains or whatever. The larger temporary signs, that's correct. So those are typically rented, most of them, and they are temporary portable signs. What we would like to see more of, that can still occur in a cost-effective way, is what the bylaw would describe as a freestanding sign. And that's where it would need to be anchored in some way. There's no specific wording about how it needs to be anchored. I think it probably just says to the satisfaction of the development authority, so that we can review what they're proposing and how they're proposing to anchor it. The other thing about freestanding signs, and you will see them on either side of the property line, is that, especially along the highway, typically signs are required to be located on the property, on the same parcel that the business is located on. We do have occasions where, because the highway right-of-way is so wide, the boulevards are so wide, and we have approved signage along Highway 27 that is within the highway right-of-way. And this can still happen moving forward. It just requires consultation with Alberta Transportation, because technically that they control what goes into those rights-of-way. But yeah, that's the type of, so rather than being a temporary portable sign, we would want to see it conform with the regulations for freestanding sign. And we do feel like that can still be done without spending tens of thousands of dollars. We're not talking the freestanding signs that you see at Cornerstone or like gas stations, things like that. They can be smaller scale still.
Thank you, and thank you for your comment, Mr. Stallone. I think one item that came up at the Chamber of Commerce was the fact that they didn't have really too much problem with the temporary sign portion of the bylaw. They just had a concern about how it was being enforced when it has to be consistent, and but that's outside of our discussion right now, and something that you guys should just keep in mind going forward. Councillor Cummings.
Thank you. Two quick questions, one about signs and one about our new environmental open space district. If I can do two questions in a row, we'll see. The first question there about the signs, recently we made a decision to allow an extra sign or two at the apartment building because it had the two separate entrances going in on Memorial Drive as well as the other street whose name eludes me at the moment. At the time, we did talk about making changes to the land use bylaw to allow for more than one large stationary sign like that in developments that have more than one ingress like that. And I didn't see any changes like that in the land use bylaws. I'm wondering if that's still being kept in there as a discretionary use where council would have to make a decision to allow a second sign, or if that's something we've embedded into the land use bylaws. We're seeing more and more of these larger infrastructure projects like this.
Thank you, and I'm not sure where the draft stands currently, but certainly For larger parcels with dual frontages, we could have a notwithstanding clause where it's, a limit of one per parcel or one per business. Notwithstanding that, if a parcel is over X square meters, or if it has two frontages on, or vehicular accesses from different streets, maybe then we allow in those situations two signs, and it wouldn't have to go to council. So I don't know the current state of the draft, but that is something, those situations are so few and far between. It is something that we can probably put in there so that a situation like that at the apartment building, we would be able to approve those. Because this gets into subjective opinion, but in cases like that, it's reasonable to allow that second sign.
Councilor Cummings, you had a second question, and if anybody else, Councilor Blatz, you have one? Go. You want to go?
Thanks, Councilor Batts. In section 6.17 on page 254 of the plan, we talk about this new zone, environmental open space district, which is parks, I guess. Does that also have two kind of related questions here? So we do have I believe a pipeline going through the town, and that pipeline, would that land above the pipeline that we're not building on or anything like that? Would that be part of the environmental open space district? I do see on the table that one of the discretionary uses is recreational outdoor, and that comes to council. So right now, if we look at behind my house at Neil Leatherdale Park, we have been traditionally over the last few years building the skating rink back there. Would that have to come to council every winter to then have a recreational outdoor hockey skating rink put into the park that we've been doing for the last few years? It seems a little bit over controlling in my mind that we would have to then, and that's how I'm reading 6.17 right now, is that in any park, if we wanted to build a temporary structure, it would have to come to council for permission to do so. Even if it doesn't have a budgetary effect, I'm just concerned about that.
I'll maybe answer your second question and leave Kyle to answer your first question, if that's okay. So there is a provision in the bylaw that says that any town-owned property or projects undertaken by the town don't require development permits. So that's an instance where that may be used with discretion to say, hey, this is something we regularly do. It is on a town-owned land undertaken by the town. We don't feel it needs a development permit.
And for your first part of that, yes, I went through the map and created a spreadsheet of all of the parcels that are trails, pipeline rights of way, things like that, and included it in that what would be rezoned to that open space district. Currently, our parks and many of our storm ponds, things like that, are just aligned with whatever district that they're adjacent to. So most of our parks are probably R1. The hospital is on a recreation facility right now because the only park or the only green space we have that is currently zoned environmental and open space is the tree reserve. Everything else is either recreational facility or just looped into whatever residential area is next to it. So we wanted, when you look at a map, and this came up actually with the last phase of the vistas, we rezoned the storm pond to R1, and people were concerned that we were getting rid of the pond and then putting housing in there. So with the new bylaw, we wanted to be more clear when people look at a zoning map that the parks will remain parks and they can't be purchased by a developer and filled in. So we're just making sure that parks look like parks on a zoning map.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Councilor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I'm through you to our land use planner, Mr. Sloan. My questions is regarding to landscaping, and particularly in a commercial or an industrial area where we're hearing from people that when they pull up to an intersection, some of the landscaping, although it's beautiful and it looks very nice, it's impeding vision, and it's making it difficult for them to move through an intersection or move along. And I didn't see anything in here, unless I'm misunderstanding, and that could very well be, anything in here that said there must be some type of setback, you know, that it doesn't impede an intersection per se. And the prime example is that secondary road that's got those, you know, where you pull out to go right across from the credit union. I never know what that road's called, but, and there's those spruce trees. Well, 63rd goes south, but there's those spruce trees along there that, I mean, when you pull up there, you're just about halfway through the intersection before you can actually see to go through. So, and I didn't see anything in here that gives us that kind of, you know, regulation, or you the ability to say, no, you have to plant this type of tree or this type of shrub, and you cannot impede an intersection.
Thank you. Yes, we do have, and I can't recall if it's in the landscaping section, but we do have a separate piece about site triangles, which would pertain to landscaping and intersections, also fences. And if a hedge is along the property line, when it gets within that site triangle, which is basically when you're at the intersection, you measure X meters inward, nothing can go in there, or a fence or a hedge, if it is within that area, can be no higher than 1 meter tall. So I think we do have that. As far as trees go, we might have some similar wording where the tree can be there as long as it's no lower than X distance or X height, the foliage on it, or the needles or branches, whatever. But yeah, we do have wording in there for this situation.
Thank you, because I was most focusing on landscaping, because that's really where I thought it would be, but I appreciate those comments.
Thank you, Councillor Butts. Is there anybody else? I think I've given a lot of leeway for council to talk today, because this is the first chance we've actually had to have an open conversation after the public hearing. So that's why I've allowed all the questions, in case you're wondering. Anybody else on council? I have not had my chance yet, and I had a lot. So I will pass them on again, because I have passed these on to both, well, CO, I guess, and also to, I would imagine they would have been passed on to the Development Authority as well. Mine are more likely in the areas of definitions. And I did have the one concern, I guess, I wanted to voice was on the alcohol production. It seems to me that there's, first of all, the definition isn't all encompassing, is what, and I've had this conversation with both of you gentlemen before with regards to that. When you take a look and you think about alcohol production, I'm thinking along the lines of, you know, a distillery, a brewery, someplace where they're actually making beer on site. They're selling food. They're selling, you know, the alcohol that they're making, as well as others. But it's not clear in the definition. And we also still, when I looked at the land use bylaw here that was in our package, we still have brewery and distillery as permitted uses under 6.10, and not alcohol production, which is weird to me. But then we don't have any definition for brewery and distillery. And this is a conversation you and I've had, Kyle, before. And certainly it needs to be all encompassing. You could easily put it in alcohol production. You could put in brackets brewery and distillery right in there and make it clear for people. But also I think we're missing the boat by not having that opportunity for an alcohol production in that definition, saying that they could have it could be attached to a restaurant or a cafe or whatever. You see them all over the province. There's kind of a pseudo one over at the Pomeroy with the Olds Brewery, being able to, you know, have that little picnic area, but then they don't serve food there, right? So I think that we need to include that in the definition. So I'm just going to point that one out, but I've still got these other ones that have not been addressed of definitions that certainly need to be before we make a final decision on this. And also, I just want to make sure everybody realizes, as Councilor Blatt said earlier, this is a fluid document. There's amendments. The last LUB had upwards of several hundred amendments over the years. So this is not something that's set in stone today and it can never be changed. Or when it goes back to council for second and third reading, things change. And you need to be fluid, you need to be flexible, and you need to be open for new developments, new ideas. Who knew that you could have container homes before, you know? And now that's something that's moving into a lot of communities, not necessarily ours, but certainly other ones. And you need to be flexible, and that's what having the ability to change the land use bylaw going forward to address those kinds of changes in the environment, in materials, is good. Is a good thing. So that was my last comment. Anybody else? Can we wrap this up? Can we get a motion on the floor? Councillor Cummings, a motion? I hope.
I'm just a little confused about the wording in the motion that's on page 104. I don't know how comfortable I am saying or including into the motion the amendments that we may or may not want, especially when we didn't come to a consensus on the secondary suites option. If that's the way we want to go, or is there some other way we want to go with this one here for wording that might make better sense?
Actually, I think we did have a majority on the secondary suites. So there was, so option 2, and in the first one, I can't even remember now, it's so long ago, was option 2 as well, I think. So I think we do have those solidified. We've gone around the table. Everybody said which option they wanted. And I think we should just need to provide that information to our administration. So if you can make a motion, that'd be fine. Thank you, Councillor Cummings.
I move that administration presents the following amendments with the second reading of bylaw 2025-14, RTD district option 2 and secondary suites option 2.
Okay, I'm going to call the vote on the options for 2 and 2. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. Now we can move on to something else. Sorry.
I'd just like to thank our municipal land use planner, Kyle Sloan, and our manager, planning and infrastructure, James, for spending this time with us this afternoon.
Does anybody need a break? Are we good? Let's move on then, because we've got a few items left. I am just scrolling through. It takes a while. 275, page 275. We are going on to business 4A policy 903. I was getting numbers backwards. C, playground inspection and maintenance. CEO Williams.
Thank you once again, Deputy Mayor. So I'll cover this one for Director Lapointe. It's fairly straightforward, but with our ongoing asset management work, some of the, lower hanging fruit are things like playgrounds. So we have a playgrounds inspection and maintenance policy, which does cover off some of the higher level legislation and insurance requirements for inspecting playgrounds. But we would like to add to that this existing policy. Is around a bit of touch up on languages for inspections, but mainly number 2, some verbiage around new inspections that we do want to seek both community engagement and partnerships for constructing new or replacing existing playgrounds, and that we also pay homage to a replacement plan, which I'll scroll into the most relevant section, is right here. So we do have, I think it's 16 playgrounds or so, structures, maybe 17, but we want to make sure that we are aligning council's annual budgets with the priorities of all our assets, and playgrounds are one of those. So for example, in the coming budget 2026, we have 2 playgrounds that are up for immediate renewal in terms of the inspection number. Those being O.R. Hedges Campground and Neil Leatherdale. Not far behind is 57th Avenue closed, which is presumably on 2027's budget. So the idea of amending this policy with that going forward, council will see a budget ask aligned with our playground replacement needs, which are based upon an existing inspection regime, that rating score. Relatively minor amendments, but I think in the direction council would like to see our capital assets move to.
Thank you, CEO Williams, and I think that's exactly right. I mean, we go through service level review, we talk about our playgrounds and going through and having a policy that works, and so this is one of those policies that work. Mayor Dahl, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, CEO Williams. I would take it this is a living document, of course, when we're moving right into the 37s and 40, year 2037 and 2040. Also, I just wanted to ask in your Section 2 new construction, your first sentence there is that playground equipment must conform or confirm? Conform? Not that
It should be conform, yes, my
okay,
apologies.
that's good, thank you. And if you're ready, I can certainly make a motion unless you're taking questions.
I'll take questions first, and then we'll put a motion on the table. Anybody have any questions? Okay, seeing none. Good, we exhausted our discussions. Go ahead,
thank you.
Mayor Dahl.
I hope I'm around in 2040 to see some more extra older grandchildren there. I so move that the committee accepts the information as presented and request policy 903C, playground inspection and maintenance, be brought to a future council meeting for final approval.
Okay, thank you very much. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. We'll move on to 4B. Oh, is there a second part? Oh. I thought it was an either or. Sorry, CEO Williams, can you tell us, is that an either or is that two motions there?
Yeah, it was meant for two motions.
Thank you so much. Can I get the second motion, Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I move that the committee accepts the playground evaluation report as presented.
Thank you. All in favor? And that's carried as well. We'll move on to 4B, which is Administrative Policy 132 AP and 133 AP to rescind 317C.
Yes, thank you once again. So this is more housekeeping than anything. Last December, OHS updated its workplace guidelines on bullying and harassment. Right now, council has policy 317C, which needs to be updated. That in conjunction with a drug and alcohol update. We're proposing to take these two policies into the administrative realm, personnel, as they're more easily handled and then updated as those regulations changed. Those two proposed administrative policies are attached for your reference, but for those two to become effective, council will need to rescind 317C. So largely driven by provincial directives, but still covering our responsibilities under both workplace harassment, respectful workplaces, and drug and alcohol.
Thank you, CEO Williams, and that makes total sense. Can I get a motion? Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Is there any comments or questions? Councillor Cumming.
Thanks. This might be a strange question because we haven't seen this council policy to administrative policy change before. Because 317C is a council policy, it includes councilors. Does the 132 and 133 policies include the elected officials as it is an administrative policy not voted on by council? A weird case scenario, we should also be beholden to those types of rules and regulations in the workplace. So I'm just interested in how that works when it goes from a council policy where we're affected to a administrative policy where we may not be beholden to that policy.
Yep. Very fair comment. And actually in the next section, it touches on this. With the recent Bill 50 the province passed in the spring, council, you cannot, going forward, make any policies or bylaws that regulate the conduct of yourselves or your respective colleagues. So this also covers that base. So no, the administrative policies that are attached here will only be for staff essentially. And obviously, myself as the only employee of council, that would be dealt with through, council means as well. But in terms of council conduct, behavior, whatever you want to call it, you are unable to make any type of rules to govern yourselves. So.
CA Williams, correct me if I'm wrong, that would be the province then starting to make those rules again or changes, right?
Correct. Yeah, the province did say that with Bill 50 acclaimed in May, I believe.
Thank you. Got that. Okay. Would Councilor Wilson, you were going to put a motion on the floor?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I make the motion that the committee accept policies 132 AP and 133 AP for information and direct the CAO to bring policy 317C to a future council meeting to be rescinded.
Thank you very much. All in favor? And that's carried. We'll move on to 4C then. We have the Council and Council Committee Procedure Bylaw 2025-16 draft, Committee of the Whole Bylaw 2025-17 draft. And CEO Williams, could you speak to this, please?
Indeed. So the two bylaws here are, again, procedural in nature and driven by recent provincial changes. Even though the procedural bylaw is reviewed by the incoming council fairly early in the term, we felt it prudent to have it align with recent provincial directives under Bill 50. So essentially, we're proposing to rescind the Code of Conduct bylaw, which are now not effective anyways. The province took away your ability to regulate your conduct, and then to remove references to the Code of Conduct in your procedural bylaw. So it only pertains to amendments in those regards for the procedural bylaw and a full rescindment of the Code of Conduct bylaw. Oh, sorry. And the FOIP Act changed very recently to the Access to Information Act, so we just adjusted those words as well, swapped one phrase for another.
Right, it's pretty straightforward. Any questions or comments on these? I don't see any. Can I get a motion? Councilor Walsh.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. I move that the committee accept the recommended amendments to the Council and Council Committee Procedure Bylaw and Committee of the Whole bylaws and direct the CAO to bring these proposed amendments to the October 14, 2025 regular council meeting.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We'll now move on to 4D, Residential Tax Incentive Bylaw 2025-15, and CO Williams.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Me again, but the last one. So in 2023, Council first passed its first version of Policy 1003C, which was formalizing something we used to do in our development agreements. At that time, there was no clear legislative mechanism or avenue through the Municipal Government Act for Council to provide property tax incentives to residential development. And this was kind of our workaround, like many other municipalities. Last fall, the province changed the rules. The MGA, section 364.2, provides council that may authorize by bylaw residential tax incentives. Prior to that, it was only for commercial and industrial tax incentives. So what this proposes to do is to take policy 1003C and put it into a new bylaw to comply with the Municipal Government Act. The primary change, of course, is that it's a council program to be operated by administration, essentially. Whereas before, it would come to council each time. This way, it would be largely in the development agreement process. For example, a new community, perhaps one to our west, one of the stipulations in that bylaw is that if a developer creates 7 or more new residential lots, they have a 3-year scheduled abatement program on the municipal portion of taxes. For the high density incentive, a 1-year post-construction incentive is on there as well. So those transfer over largely intact. It's in bylaw now as per the MGA, and the development officers through the development agreement process will have the ability to refine and approve council's bylaw.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions or comments with regards to this issue? I don't see any hands up. Can I get a motion? Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I move that the committee accept the residential tax incentive bylaw for information and direct the chief administrative officer to bring back to a regular council meeting.
Thank you very much, Councillor Daly. All in favor of the motion? And that motion is carried. And that ends our, oh, sorry, we have one more. Sorry. Oh, the end further. I keep I keep forgetting about the end further part. Okay, well, it's a good thing you guys have whip me into shape here. Okay, so who would like to make a motion with the other? Thank you, Councillor Blatz. Give her.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. And also that policy 1003C be brought back to a future council meeting for rescinding.
Thank you very much. And all in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Okay, now we're done. Thank you. That adjourns the meeting for today. Thank you, everybody, for being online in person. We're closing at 4:16.